should we call ourselves to order?
If-
Oh, yeah.
You can't, there's no action to be taken, because there's no real agenda except for this.
It was
but certainly you
posted, I
could.
think we
It was
should.
posted.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I will call the select board to order at 6:06 PM. And next up, it looks like financial planning. John, do you want to call yourselves to order?
I call the Financial Planning Committee to order tonight.
Great.
Similarly, call the Appropriations Committee to order.
I call the Northborough School Committee to order.
Okay, I think that probably covers it. All right, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
Floor
good.
is yours.
I appreciate you giving me some logistical support. So it took us over 45 days to schedule this, to coordinate schedules between staff and vacation and, the elected leadership and the appointed leadership to get this underway. Angie did a lot of that work, legwork, so that 45 days is now culminated into this event. And you've done these before. This one may be a little different than what you're used to. We will have departments come up and give a 5 to 7 minute presentation so you all can see from their perspective what they think their operational and capital needs are for the next 5 years. Why that's important to me to share that with you is because I want to know if we should be working on those things or not, right? Because you are the leadership in the community, and I witnessed one town meeting. It was very lengthy. The town meeting looks to you all for advice, counsel, and leadership. So if I can provide you good information, help the rest of the community who's not doing this like you are to make a good decision as well. So that's the essence of it. So my quick announcements are, there's a state primary election on September 3rd. It's not the ballot initiative relative to anything local, but it's a state primary on the 3rd of September. And then there's a special town meeting October 7th that the board had set a couple weeks back with at least one item on that agenda, namely the fire station building replacement. And then the general election will be held on Tuesday, November 5th. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that will contain a ballot question for a debt exclusion for the fire station. We'll cover what that means and what those fiscal impacts are to the single-family tax home resident as we go through. So I wanted to make those quick announcements. So a financial trend monitoring system was developed by the International City Managers Association, ICMA. A couple ground rules I'll just tell you quickly. Bathrooms are right out that door. Emergency exits there and out that door. So if you need to go and walk around, whatever you got to do, there's no disrespect going to be taken by me or any of my staff if you need to move about. I'll go through the rest of those quick points. In the back of the room, there are a lot of paper stapled handouts. Some of them, there's a one-sheeter that deals with cost-saving initiatives that we've tried to undertake in previous years and in recent times for each department. They're not quantified. We haven't tallied them up. My guess, if we did that, we would find that the things we either avoided or saved totaled in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can do the math if we so choose. So a couple of those examples are this. Some of them deal with risk and risk management. For West Main, for example, we would normally just put that under our MIA policy. MIA is our intergovernmental insurance provider for most cities and towns across Massachusetts. We got a quote from them that was $46,000. We decided when I got here to shop it locally and see if we can get the same type of coverage for a lower premium. And we did. I think it was like $12,000, $15,000 difference. But what's more important is that it's the risk aversion. If something happened to that and it's on our main policy, the rest of our pool, if you will, could possibly go up because we would have a loss on our main policy. So we avert risk wherever we can or avoid it, and we try to save or avoid spending money wherever we can. So that's what that sheet is. Other things that are back there, and these will all roll into the department's presentations, but there's a long-range operational plan, a long-range capital plan. Thankfully, not every department, when they were asked to look at the next 5 years, they didn't have anything. Doesn't mean they won't. It just seems right now in this snapshot they don't have anything. They may have something, but thankfully they don't, because when we see what the numbers look like in 2030, we're all going to be a little sticker shocked. So I'll just give you that ahead of time. No one's fault. You run an operation of $80 million and you have $4.5 billion in assets for all of your valuable property. So it's important to take what's important to you when people make presentations is on that back table. So if you like, or you want more information about the thought process that Recreation put into their presentation, and you want to take what they've written down on these sheets that they were required to fill out from a process standpoint, you can take those with you. I will tell you that this presentation is lengthy. We will put it on the web tomorrow, along with every other document that you have here. So people that might miss this can at least view every document we have, and there'll be a video link to this particular meeting so they can see it. We have two people that are out, the town clerk and my planner. One's sick, one's on vacation. You can figure out which is which. I thought that was going to be funnier. Tough crowd. I should have brought more candy. So they're not here, but we had an idea. Mitch supported this idea after me thinking of it, but we'll tape them after, and we'll, splice them in, so to speak. The other thing, we've had a couple long meetings of recent, and I've been a part of a 4-night town meeting or whatever it was, then a board meeting. So I want us to end at 9:30. I hope that's reasonable. So I want the staff to make their presentations between 5 and 7 minutes, and I want to hold questions until they get completely finished. So you have notepads and pens in front of you. So I want you to jot down those notes. I also want you to, if there's something we don't spend enough time on because we just don't have enough time, your boards and committees all have agendas and all have meetings. Invite us in to talk about the thing that we didn't talk enough about. So if you want to know more about tax title and tax taking and how that works and the legislation that's going through the governor's desk right now, just signed, and you want to learn more about that, we'll come into your meeting and we'll talk more about that. But we can't get through everything that we have to cover tonight in 3.5 hours, including all those ancillary things that, branch off in decision trees and so forth. So hold the questions if you could, take notes, we'll answer them after. The department heads will answer those questions after. And then Jason will give a presentation about the finance, both looking backwards and looking forward, where we could be given a set of assumptions. And the purpose for me to have this meeting with all of you, so we all hear the same thing at the same time, and we can make a decision about what the future of the community is at the same time. May sound too holistic, but that's the goal. Hopefully we're not going to come to it. There's not going to be an ending of this meeting where we're all going to be like, we're doing this. There's going to be more meetings. There's going to be more stuff and more work to do and more discovery. Think of it like peeling an onion. I think this is like the first outer layer, and we're going to get into it. No tears will be shed, I hope. I'm at that age that I need glasses. I apologize. There's also a survey, and I think this is important. I think most of my staff does this when they have events or they have a recreation program or a library program. They want to get feedback. So I want to get feedback too. What did we cover? What was good? What was good about the space? What was bad about the space? You want to be anonymous? Be anonymous. I just want feedback so we can make this better for you all. So there's a survey back. Is there a survey back there? There's a survey back there. And I got to thank Angie. I got to thank Linda. And I got to thank Diane, because without them, this is just not happening. And my extended leadership team that's all around the room, I appreciate them. So I wanted to take a minute for them. I covered that. This is good. I'm really rolling here, guys. There's a binder on your desk. I'm not going to take you through it, but this is like a sub. I don't want to use the word Bible, but they're guiding philosophies in here and resources for anyone who's interested in municipal finance. So you might get a crash course tonight. You'll understand the underpinnings of what I might talk about or what Jason might talk about. It's all in here. I won't go through every one. There's a nice tab table of contents. It'll tell you what's in there. Some of it may be very basic or rudimentary to folks, but other folks it may be very helpful. We try to tab it out where it was digestible. We also took an added step for the folks who travel on a train or don't want to read paper. We'll put QR codes on everything so you can just QR it and go to the website where it lives and you can read it. So from our financial policies to DOR to ICMA Code of Ethics, kind of like the underpinnings of what we believe in local government and municipal finance. So that's what's in that book. I talked about making notes for questions. If there's a piece of jargon that Jason will use, like DOR, I don't know what that means, we should answer those as we go. If I say ICMA, you don't know what ICMA is, interrupt us and let us tell you what that is, because if you don't know what the acronym is, it's just not going to make sense. So we will take the time to answer those things. All right, having said that, you have 14 departments that are going to make brief 5 to 7 minute presentations. Again, looking at operations. I don't know if this group's ever looked at operations from a long-term perspective, but it's real, right? We need to think about it and look at it. Some departments don't have any anticipated growth other than just natural pay increases. But if they have innovations and they want to talk about their department and what they're doing, that's what they're going to present for 5 to 7 minutes. So I'm going to start off with Jeff, the veterans agent. I will tell you, I think in 2012, we started the district. It's Grafton, Northborough, Westborough, and Shrewsbury. When I was in Grafton, I did it for selfish reasons. I wanted to save money. And then I quickly realized that it's about providing service to veterans. So Jeff's been doing that and going to continue to do that. So I'll let Jeff talk to you a little bit about his presentation.
Hello.
Hi.
Like Tim mentioned, my name is Jeff Farrell. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for the Central Massachusetts Veterans Service District. So the 4 towns combined, like Tim mentioned, Grafton is the host community, so all of our district funds and the other VSO and my salary are paid through Grafton. The town, Northborough, has the lowest percentage of the bill due to population. But there are 2 of us. We work 8-hour days, 2 8-hour days in town. We're available to help veterans with any municipal veteran benefit, federal, state, whatever. People could call us. They need help because their grass is overgrown, and you find a landscaper that's sympathetic to veterans. Capital-wise, we don't have a big bill. This is pretty easy for me. We're not growing. Like I mentioned, there's 2 staff. We're both full-time. In the past, it was 2 part-time agents, and I believe right before I was hired, the decision was made to make it 2 full-time positions. We have, like I mentioned, a district budget that covers our website expenses, emails, cell phones. The portion that Northborough pays covers that. And there's also an unclassified line in town that we cover flags for Memorial Day, veteran grave markers for the cemeteries, Memorial Day expenses, Veterans Day expenses, anything that may come up. And then as part of our, one thing that may be interesting for the financial side, while it goes to the individual veterans, by us allowing to help veterans file for VA claims, a little bit over $2 million a year is given to Northborough residents as a tax-free benefit to any service-connected. There's different disabilities, but it's either a service-connected disability, a pension, or if a widow of a veteran who passed away from a service-connected death, they are awarded a benefit as well. So that's part of our role, is to help the veterans seek out those benefits. And I would say that's about my presentation. All right.
So if you had questions for Jeff, you'd write them down. We'll get to them at the end. Allie, you want to come up?
Hi, I'm Allie Lane, the Recreation Director. So I have 2 goals to kind of talk with you guys about today, and I'll be as brief as I can. The first goal is to ensure the financial stability and growth of my department by asking the town to financially support both full-time positions in the office. So currently my assistant Megan and I are, pre-COVID, we were fully self-sufficient, and our 2 salaries plus insurance was covered through the funds that were brought in through programming. Post-COVID, we started out with $0, and we started from scratch. So the first year after COVID, 100% was paid through the general fund. This current year, we are paying $100,000 from our revolving account into the general fund to go towards our salaries. Currently, our salaries are $164,000. What I'm proposing is a 2-year phased plan, and next fiscal year 26, I'd like to put in that the revolving account would put in $50,000 towards the general fund. And then in fiscal year 27, we would put in 0, and we'd be fully funded by the town. The reasoning behind that is it's very difficult for us to start from 0. When I started here 23 years ago, we had money in the bank ready to go. So if we had a bad year, if something happened, we had what we used to call a fund balance to kind of cover us. But as our salaries go up, the cost of the vendors to run the program goes up. We now have to pay the schools to use them for overtime, which wasn't, 15 years ago, that wasn't a thing. So everything just sort of keeps going up, and it's really hard for us to keep going up in price. We are a town department that families really rely on to have affordable programming. Currently, Northborough is the only town in Central Mass that was self-sufficient in recreation. We are also, in a town our size, the only town that has only 2 employees in recreation. All other towns our size, and even Southborough, who's 8,000 people, has 3 full-time employees. So I'm not asking for more employees, I'm just asking to have the town support what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to do is create programming for not just kids, but all ages, every age possible. We're trying to create programs for at an affordable price. And in order to do that in the future, we're going to need the support from the town and the taxpayers. The second request is that we're looking to change, hang on, let me just find this, the job description of my administrative assistant. So when I started 23 years ago, it was just me sitting in the office in the corner on the 3rd floor and just started writing up programmings and getting going. And we started building so quickly that I was given an admin for 19 hours a week, which was super helpful. And then I outgrew that within a year, and we were able to get an admin on for 40 hours. So we both worked full-time for many years. And as I kept growing, and I'm sure a lot of you know me, I just want to keep getting better and better and better and adding more and more, to the point where I overdo it for the 2 people in our office. So my admin position has changed even before COVID. An admin is someone who generally is in the office answering phones, mails, emails, computer work, all filing, all that stuff. That is not what my second position does. She goes to all of my programming. She helps create the programs. She attends all of the events and runs them. Perfect example, the last day of school event, I had to go in for emergency surgery, and I could not go to one of our biggest events of the year. And her, along with Jen and Isabel, handled it beautifully. I didn't even have a second, of stress. And to me, that is not an admin position. And we have a current position that went through the classification comp study, which is a recreation supervisor, program supervisor. The admin is a grade 3. The recreation supervisor is a grade 4. Taking the current salary and what it would change, it would be a $4,432 difference if we were to change that. But I think if we did, it would help Northborough stay competitive. 3 months ago, Hudson, Grafton, Westborough, they all had program coordinator positions open in their towns. And I just sat there literally going, oh my gosh, is she going to leave me? Is she going to leave me? Because she could easily do that job because she's been doing it for 2 years in my office. And I feel like that needs to be recognized. Other than that, those are the 2 goals that I'll be looking for in the near future. Thank you.
So we don't have the clerk, but we do have our new HHS director, which we'll get up and
Hi everyone, my name's Isabella. I am the new Health and Human Service Department, Director of the department. I will keep it short and sweet. We are in a building, evaluating kind of stage of this new department, so we're not asking for more funds in the next 5 years. Also, no capital funds. As you see, we have 3 large grants that fund most of our staff. That will continue for the foreseeable future. They're all multi-year, long-term grants. But yeah, so we're focusing on recruitment. Thank you so much to Diane. We have social worker interviews next week, so hiring a lot of staff, evaluating how we can better integrate the department, and then the third one, my favorite as an epidemiologist, is data evaluation and adjusting as needed. So hopefully I can come with more data and information in the next few months, but for now, that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you.
We're going to skip over the clerk and cable access. This may take more than 7 minutes because there's important pieces to this. Can I just set this up a little bit? So cable, come on up. As you're walking, I'll do it quick. So if you have cable, you pay a franchise fee. It's 5%. It used to be 4. We negotiated 5 from both providers to run lines of cable on our utility poles. We get this fee. So as subscribership goes down, we run in peril because we want to provide transparency, and this is the very mechanism in which we provide transparency. Come on up.
Slides in here? Yeah. Oh, wow. First one with the slides, please.
Right button.
Okay, all right. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dana Volke. I'm the director of Northborough Cable. I've been with the department for 7, 8 years, give or take, and last year I became the director after my predecessor, Kathy, retired. Okay, all right, so just to kind of give you a brief idea of what we are, some of you might not have an idea. We are the town's AV department, basically, we're sort of the communications hub. We are on TV, we're online. We're everywhere. What can I say? We're in your ears. We do podcasts. We're all over the place. There should be no reason why anybody would not have the opportunity to view or listen to any of our content. First and foremost, we have our 3 channels. Public, which is where you find normal public interest stuff, Apple Fest, things of that nature. Our education channel, which is all of our school-related material. And the government channel, which is all of our municipal content. And we have quite a bit of distribution out there. So like I said, our normal channels, which are on Charter and Verizon. We also have a Facebook page. We have technically 2 YouTube pages. We take a lot of our audio that we have, so like municipal meetings and things like that, and we put it up on a podcast page. So if you drive into Boston for work, and you can listen to your favorite stuff. You can view all 3 of our channels live streaming 24/7 online, and we also have an on-demand video section, so you can just go ahead and watch whatever you want that's on there. So as the new director for the next 3 to 5 years, one of my biggest things that I really wanted to do, first and foremost, is really modernize the department and get away from the old school stigma of public access, if you will, because we are hyper-local community media, ideally. And so I really wanted to, really focus on communications and relevant marketing for our town departments and our nonprofits and just for the town in general. Just really improving the quality of all of our meeting coverage and our videos. If you guys have seen any of the videos that we've been pumping out in the last year, really trying to get the quality really way up there as best as we can with what we have. Really want to utilize more podcasting, which is very popular these days. Want to do a little bit of consolidation on some of our distribution. One thing that's really important is the installation of some of our permanent AV equipment that's going to be in some certain areas, like this room. That would be fantastic. If you look behind you, we have what we had to put together today, which took a couple hours, and it'd just be great just to have everything in the room. You flip the switch and it's on. We used to have a really good collaboration with the school, and after the pandemic, that sort of diminished. Now that I'm back in, I really want to get back into working with them and getting sports covered and event coverage done. Just been talking with Allie at the rec department about getting some youth summer camps going. I used to do that at one of my former places, and it's a lot of fun. Want to work on digital archiving of a lot of our old legacy media. We had a ton of old VHS tapes and DVD, mini DVD, and one of my part-time staff has been spending a lot of time digitizing that stuff, and we can put the stuff online. Archive.org and things like that. We've been putting a lot of stuff up on there, and possibly looking at some other solutions. I was just talking to one of my reps about doing closed captions for live broadcasts. That's something that we currently don't have unless you're up on YouTube and after the fact it pops up, but to have it live would be great. That's something I'd really like to get going. And we also have now the opportunity to have apps like on your Roku and things like that that can have our material on there. A lot of stuff. Some of it requires no extra money, stuff that we already have, and some of it will take a chunk of change. We'll get into that. One thing that you may not know is how we're funded. We have, in the, 20, 25 plus years of this department, we have had 0 tax dollars. We've always been funded strictly, exclusively from cable subscriptions. They're what's called your PEG fee. So if you have either Verizon or Charter at home and you look at your bill, there should be a little PEG fee on there. And we have a 5-year contract with Verizon. They only do 5-year contracts these days, and Charter is 10 years. And yeah, obviously you can see their expiration dates. And the interesting thing though is we distribute our material to everybody. You don't have to be a cable subscriber to view our stuff. Like I said, it's available anywhere. There's no excuse for anybody not to see it. And we're going to be kind of getting into that later. So to show you, these are our cable payments for the last couple of years between Charter and Verizon. And some of them, per our contracts, we have some capital. So you can see there's 2 from Verizon that we got some big capital. They usually give us a lump sum. Charter gives us a little tiny bit at a time. Right now it's only like $1,600 a year. But you can see, and over here on the right, we have our cable subscribers. And as you can see, it's going lower and lower and lower. And, I'm not going to point to anybody or say, hey, raise your hand if you don't have cable. But, there are other options that people would be getting, like Hulu and YouTube and things like that have what are considered IP streaming. There's Sling and things like that. There's no way that we can get any kind of internet revenue from these cable providers. We've been, all the other people in this industry have been going to the state to try to get that to happen, and it just hasn't happened. So on average, every year we lose about 4.5% of revenue, and that's roughly around 300 subscribers per year that are now going towards Hulu and whatever else. So with that said, these are my predictions at what we are going to be getting from our cable subscribers over the next couple of years. As you can tell, it's obviously going down and going down. Now, we come down to my budget. And with my budget, it's been, right around that $300,000 range. This year, I did a bit of cutting of some stuff, and I was able to get just under $301,000. We have 2 full-time staff, including myself, and we have 3 part-time staff. And we do a lot of work, I'll tell you that. And these are my projections that are right here on the bottom. And what that mostly is just the cost of the employees. So COLA, merits, health insurance, things of that nature that go up every single year. And not so much the other things, such as getting equipment and things like that. I have it built into my budget to, it's about $12,500 every year where I can get some equipment to fix something that's broken or replace something that's at the end of its life or something to improve what we already have. So not too much. It's mostly the impact is the employees. And so you might, like you saw on the other slide, we just got shy of $200,000 last year, and we have a $300,000 budget, so what's going on here? So we've been dipping into our savings over the last several years, and I come to find out when I got here that we didn't have as much saved as I originally understood. And based off of my predictions here, by FY27, we will not be able to sustain our current level of services at the budgetary level that we will be at that time. And it is at that time my suggestion that I go before annual town meeting and ask the town if they could help subsidize every year to maintain that level of service every year. Because as I said, we're going to be out of our savings, and then our payments go less, and our budget goes a little bit more. So we need to subsidize that again to maintain that level of service. All right. So on top of that, there are some capital projects that I think would be imperative that we focus on over the next couple of years. Next year, I'd like to focus on our broadcast server, which is the brains of the heart of our operation. We can't work without this thing. Sorry for the typo. It should be our 24/7 player up there instead of 2/7. But basically, this is how we go live. This is how we schedule all of our stuff. This is how we go live up on our online applications. This is a vital piece of equipment that we need. It's going to cost about $55,000 to replace this thing. I was just talking to my rep the other day. And how we fund this thing, I might, in potentially last year, potentially be able to purchase this, what's left of our savings. But if not, I may have to go to the town. Or I do understand that there is some ARPA money left. I may have to talk to some of these folks over here on my left about that. And also next year, something that I'd really like to look into is for $11,000 is getting the same capability. This goes in with our TelView Hypercaster. This is the piece of equipment where we can get live on-air closed captioning. I've had a lot of people over the years ask us about this. I've had other staff and people ask about getting this done. And the great thing about this is it's literally live on demand. And the neat thing is it can make transcripts, so you can use it for meeting minutes afterwards. And it's pretty impressive stuff. But there is a little bit of a price tag. Same thing. There's a chance I could pay for this out of what's left of my budget there. And what's interesting with that is, depending on how we set things up, if we have a friends or anything like that. Sorry, I'm taking a while. If we there are sponsorship opportunities. And the following year, I'd like to do an installation over at the auditorium over at the high school. We record an insane amount of stuff over there, and having permanent cameras in there and a feed from the projector and a feed from the audio would just be a tremendous, tremendous help. And after that, the following year, also want to look over at the RHS library, because we also record a lot of stuff in there, not just school committee meetings, but we're also in there covering a lot of school events. And if the public had an event that they wanted to do in there, we can go in there and record that too. And we also have the ability to do hybrid stuff too. So, almost done.
That's going to go up.
Okay, all right. Second to last, the school committee is moving over to Lincoln Street. There's air conditioning over there. I right now have a setup for them now, but same thing, I'd like to just get permanent cameras in there. Same thing, and this is even stuff that we could use for other school events and public events and whatnot. And lastly, the room that we're in right now, we also cover a ton of stuff in here. And like I said, we very similar kind of a situation where I'd like us to be able to get permanent cameras in this room, actual projector up on the wall, audio, and hybrid connectivity in this as well. And same thing with these. I would most likely be going towards annual town meeting for funds for this, but I do know that there is a little bit of ARPA money left, and so time's not run out on that. So you guys might be seeing me at a meeting pretty soon. So yeah, that's where I'm at with my department right now. So, yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, all right. There's the clicker. All right.
So Bob Federico, the building inspector, I'll tell you, there's over 2,200 permits that his department issues that yields a little bit over $400,000 a year, so 1.5 people with that yield is pretty good. This is Bob.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Federico. I'm your building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. Just as a little bit of a backup, what I'm about to say is the Reader's Digest version. The details of everything I'm saying here are in the sheets available at the bookstore at the end of the summit. Okay. As Tim said, we do about 2,200 permits a year. Based out of that, we are responsible for about 9,000 pages of code, which is not anything to do with Northborough. And then you add in the state zoning bylaws, the local zoning bylaws, AAB, ADA, flood. Okay, we also provide zoning interpretations to residents, and we deal with complaints. And to be honest with you, we're not keeping up. Over the past 5 years, we have had an extremely big increase in the amount of permits, legal actions that we have to deal with, zoning interpretations, and complaints. John Kader had always talked about budgeting for level service. And for the past 4 years, I have been asking for additional funding to increase the hourly number, the number of hours our part-time building inspector is here from 19 hours to full-time. All this work that we do is myself and one 19-hour person. For the past 5 years, I've been denied. Nobody's ever given me a good reason. And to be honest with you, I'm a little frustrated. Some of the things that we need to deal with is that the money that would cost to bring in a full-time person, one, to fund the difference, okay, we pay for every year. Our budget is about $200,000 a year. Our average income is profit to the town is an additional $250,000 a year on average. So we have the funding to pay for this. Now, understand, the money that comes from permits goes into local receipts. It eventually goes into free cash, and it goes into whatever free cash purchases, everything from playgrounds to garage doors to upgrades on TV cameras, which I'm all for. But why can't I have 60 grand to fund public safety? Okay? Some of the things that I'd like to do with this new position, if you would, is catch up on a lot of things we haven't been able to do. Permits we are required to get out within 30 days, or at 30 days plus. That's a state requirement. If I do no action on a permit application, that person has a right to start that work without the issuance of a permit. Number two, zoning interpretation forms. I am not obligated to give them out. I do them as a community service for informational purposes. I don't charge for them. We do about 150 of them a year. Currently, I've stopped doing them because I don't have the time. Okay? The other thing I want to do, that something is required, is I want to step up our building safety inspections for multifamily housing units and churches. Now, the state code requires the owners of those properties to apply to us to do those inspections. They don't. I want to start a program that gets them on a program so that we schedule it and we work with these people to get things up to speed. We had a fatality in town 2 years ago, and the owners never called for a smoke and carbon inspection. With a full-time person, we can do that. and I don't have it. The other thing that we want to do in helping to possibly fund this increase, our permit fees are the lowest in the state. We need time to do the research to come up with a solid update to our permit fees. Some of our permit fees go back to the 90s. You have anything in your wallet that goes back to the 90s? We need time to do that, and I don't have the time. Some of our permits for a deck, I think, are $25. That doesn't get it through our online permitting system. Never mind plan review and 3 inspections. So, the flip side of this. The infrastructure for this particular position is already in place because we already have a part-time inspector. We have a cubicle, space in the office, computers, iPads, ready to go. And what I'm looking for is about $60,000 to make that difference in converting that part-time position to full-time. I apologize if I'm coming across a little anxious. It's frustrating, and I hope you understand. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kendra. I'm the Senior Center Director. I, too, like Dana, have a lot of slides to get through, so I'm going to do my best to talk fast, but if you can't understand me, I'll be around for questions after. So this is the current employment structure of the Northborough Senior Center. I am the director. We have a full-time administrator, 5 part-time WRTA van drivers, a part-time program coordinator, a full-time outreach coordinator that oversees the volunteers and senior tax work-off participants, and 2 part-time Bistro 119 coordinators. So this is the layout. Myself, the administrator, and outreach coordinator are funded through the town. Our program coordinator is funded fully by the formula grant, which is awarded by the state of Massachusetts. And we have 5 part-time van drivers. Those are all paid for by the WRTA, the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. Our 2 Bistro employees are self-funded, so they are paid out of the earnings of the Bistro. So, the Northborough Senior Center was open for 250 days in fiscal year '24. In those 250 days, we had a check-in count of 20,961 people. We are on track to see an increase in fiscal year '25. We had 2,565.92 volunteer hours worked. 1,613 hours were spent providing outreach for 398 people. We had a total of 42,672 event or activity swipe-ins, and our vans provided 3,352 rides. This information is provided by those that remember to swipe in. That is not always the case. We estimate that at least 25% of people do not swipe in when they participate in an activity. We have done what we can to encourage people to swipe in. So the Northborough Senior Center is undoubtedly a beautiful building, but to keep the building in the best possible condition, there are maintenance needs. The Senior Center has not had the vinyl and carpet floors cleaned in 3+ years, and they're showing their wear. We have no shelter for the WRTA vans, and van drivers must use a stepladder to shovel off the roof of the vans in snow. This can be dangerous, especially in bad weather conditions. The Senior Center has never been power washed. The windows have not been cleaned in 5+ years. The cloth chairs have never been cleaned since opening over 11 years ago. None of the interior rooms have been repainted, and the Senior Center has a largely flawed security system. We have no security cameras. These are areas of the carpeting that are showing some staining and general wear. This is the exterior in the back that shows we're in need of some power washing. These are places where you can really see that the vinyl floor is in need of some work. These are all pictures from our Bistro 119. And these are cracks and scuffs in the paint. It might be pretty obvious, but we actually have a lot of walker incidents where people scuff the walls with their walkers and canes. That is a big cause for paint scuffing and chipping. So staffing, the Northborough Senior Center saw no office staff increase since being in a 2-room building on Center Drive. We have exceptionally hardworking part-time employees, but have no contingency plans for them leaving. Our Bistro 119 employees do significant amounts of work on their off time and are not paid for it. That's a trend that cannot continue. It is difficult for staff to take vacation or be out sick because we have so few people to staff the building. We are understaffed in comparison to senior centers in our area. So this is a comparison of not only towns that are close to us locally, but also towns that are similar in population. So we have 3.5 office staff members, and everybody else is between 4 and 7. So our long-range staffing plan for FY26 will hopefully bring a customer service employee to the senior center. With this addition, we will have better tracking, scheduling, and reporting for critical services like health insurance, counseling, tax preparation, and WRTA scheduling, more coordination of volunteer schedules, and better use of the My Senior Center computer program, which is how we track all of our data, better tracking for senior tax work-off participants, increased program advertising and social media, someone to sit with front desk volunteers to ensure accurate and complete information is given to all patrons, and someone who is more available for tours, new participant questions, and general service. Our long-range staffing plan for FY27, we would like to add a custodian. A dedicated custodian maintains cleanliness and sanitation, creating a welcoming space for visitors. A custodian can promptly address emergency situations like bathroom accidents, ensuring swift cleanup and minimizing disruption. A custodian can handle the physical labor of setting up and breaking down heavy tables and chairs, making it easier to host events and activities. The director and office staff can focus on programming and activities and services for seniors without being distracted or burdened by heavy lifting on a daily basis. So looking forward to FY28, we would hope to adjust one of our Bistro 119 positions. This position would be an increase to one of our 2 part-time positions. This would replace the need for 2 part-time people, but half of the full-time person's salary could be funded out of the Bistro 119. We would be better equipped to serve meals beyond lunch, as is hugely requested by patrons. We would add additional meal offerings like healthier options at the daily meals, and this person would continue to maintain a clean and safe kitchen and dining area to adhere all health and safety regulations. And finally, looking to FY29, we would like to see an addition of a community outreach worker. This position would work closely with our existing outreach coordinator, but would increase our ability to reach residents in the community. We would see expansion of this service, and we would allow for more home visits, more potential office hours at relevant public locations like public housing, to reach vulnerable community members that otherwise may be missed, and additional work serving new arrival and English second language learners that may not be utilizing the senior center at this time.
Next up is, I call it IT still, so maybe David will correct me when it's time. You have slides? I have the slides on there. Oh, you can. Oh, really? Yeah. I'll try to put it on there. It's not a typical IT.
Thank you, Chief.
Just because those slides. I tried that at some meeting.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name's David Kane. I'm the MIS and GIS Director for the town. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight to talk about our needs. I'm primarily going to talk about the need for staff. I believe we are adequately funded when it comes to equipment, services, consultants, etc. We're woefully underfunded for staff, for people. The department was created in 1997 out of a town meeting warrant article.
the primary responsibilities were to put a network into town hall, because at the time they were using a VAX, if anyone remembers those days. I'm dating myself here. But also a GIS for the town was approved at the town meeting in '96. So those were the two things that brought me on. 1999, we then took on the responsibility for all of the town departments. Up until then, it was just town hall. So police and fire, they all had people on staff who weren't IT, but they knew about IT, I guess is the way to put it. Their primary jobs were firefighting or whatever it is that they did. So we hired our second person in 2000, and since 2000, we've been at 2 people. About 10 years ago, we started drowning, just like everyone else here who's discussing all of these needs. And we started talking with other departments, mostly fire and police, about the need for additional staff, and then brought those concerns to town administration, and well, we're still at 2 people. Just an overview of some of the things we do. All network management now, so this is between all buildings that are municipal buildings, town hall, fire, police, library, senior center, water barn, highway barn. I'm probably leaving something out. But network management, tech support for end users, all the servers and fun that goes along with managing that, backup systems, disaster recovery, on and on and on. Each of the departments have really important applications that are really important to them. For example, for Bob, it's the OpenGov system that manages his permits and licenses. For Jason and the rest of the finance team, it's Munis. And I don't mean to leave others out, but at police, we've got a next-gen application that handles all of their records. It also does the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch, for police and fire. The fire department has an electronic health records application. And if you ask each of these people, this is the primary thing that they need up and running to do their jobs. There's a lot more applications that are at play as well. Some of the other things we're talking about is the use of policies. We have very little in the way of policies right now for town staff. We're putting more in place. We're about to develop some new ones for the types of things you see up here. And then there's a lot of projects that are going on. Server replacements. We just migrated the senior center to the cloud. We have a new email archiving application to help with public records requests and other requirements, and then cybersecurity, which has now become most of what we do. It's not so much one thing or 2 things. It's not just multi-factor authentication. It's not just encrypting data. It's more of a mindset that we're trying to get everybody to become more familiar with, to not be intimidated by, and little by little we're doing things to improve that. So again, 10 years ago we started talking about adding a new position. 5 years ago we were successful with a number of grants, and we hired some consultants to do an IT strategic plan, a GIS strategic plan, and then a cybersecurity risk assessment. Those studies recommended a variety of things. The IT strategic plan noted that we were drowning. They recommended that we start or extend our use of a managed service provider and employ a security operations center. I don't want to get all geeky into some of this stuff, but a managed service provider is essentially a consultant or a vendor that has expertise in a wide number of areas. So while I am a generalist, I'm going to be wearing a lot of different hats, and I know a little about a lot of things. When something goes south, we have others that we can rely on. And our GIS strategic plan recommendations were to develop a GIS steering committee to move a lot of these data and applications to the cloud, and they recommend hiring a full-time GIS analyst. The cybersecurity risk assessment suggested also making use of a security operations center, expand the use of MFA encryption, develop an incident response plan, which I'm happy to say just last week we were told that we received funding from the state for a grant application that we had put in April, I think. And they recommended an increase in staff by 2 to 3 people, including one of those 3 or 2 to 3 being dedicated between police and fire. I'm going to cut it short there. We're doing a lot of these things right now. We've added the SOC, we've extended the use of the MSP. Last year, or the current year's budget that was reviewed at last town meeting, proposed an additional staff person, but there's a lot of needs, and it didn't make it to the table. But we're still seeking grants for some of the stuff, and hoping that you'll see the need in a similar fashion. The one thing worth pointing out here is every person here who is a town department has to come through, whether they like it or not, has to come through us to put new things in place, to bring about innovation. We've got to make sure that those things play well with the other things that are in place, that their vendors are using good security practices, and if not, what do we need to do to address some of those things? So every department here, we've got our hands in, and we need help. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you for your time.
Now you got to get that back to the original. So Jen, library, your building, you want to come up and talk for a couple minutes? Can you get this to me so I can put it in the file so I can put it online tomorrow? Or is there anything in here that's...
All right, I'm Jen Bruno. I'm the library director here. My goal is to beat Isabella and be the shortest presentation. I have no slides other than this placeholder one so that you know who's talking, because our needs are relatively small, in large part because you heard a lot from me in the last budget round, and the town successfully funded some of our biggest needs, including some of our HVAC repairs and the restoration of our assistant director position. So I really have 2 goals that I'm going to briefly mention. One is the completion of a 3-year sort of plan that we had in place to restore our Monday hours. So last year, the town approved partial funding. So right now, we have a 40-hour staff person who was increased from 19 hours a week. So the town is currently funding 30 hours. The Board of Trustees is funding the other 10. So in fiscal year 2026, we'll be asking for the rest of those hours to be funded from the town. The other thing that we need, I thought about putting up a slide of the carpet conditions, but you could just look down. Our carpet is roughly 15 years old. We've been able to maintain it through annual cleaning and things like that, but it's, heavily trafficked. There are places where it's worn right down to the concrete. It's fraying in a lot of areas, and there's a lot of questionable stains that don't always come out in the cleaning. So it will be time to replace that in the near future. So we are currently getting cost estimates for that. That's been on our radar for about a year. The big question with the cost and why I don't have a number today is because it will really depend on whether they have to move our giant book stacks in order to replace the carpet. That's a huge undertaking that requires moving all of our collections out, moving the stacks, and then putting everything back. So that is a huge cost. If they don't have to do that, then the cost will be much smaller. So as we continue to engage with vendors to get estimates for that, we'll have better numbers. That is all that I have. I think I beat her.
So we're down to the big 3. The police department is next. We got DPW and fire, and then we get to listen to Jason. You want that? I'll keep going. Pretty mad. There you go.
I'm Lieutenant Archibald Fridas. I'm filling in tonight. I'm going to be as brief as possible. This is our replacement schedule for our cruisers. Let me go back. In general, we have our cruisers on a schedule of replacing 2 to 3 vehicles back and forth over the years. It's the same system we used for 15 years. It's worked well for us. The average life of the cruisers we like to keep between 4 and 5 years, and the reason why is it's covered by the extended bumper-to-bumper warranty. It serves us well with saving the town money in repairs. We just had a Tahoe that just blew a transmission, totally covered. So that's why we like to keep that schedule. In the future, we're going to be going with the Ford Explorers. They're hybrids. We're shifting the fleet that way. We're going to be eliminating the Tahoes, the Dodges, and going with one unit for everybody. Oh, some of my slides are out there. Sorry. I can do them with it. So who are we? We're a department of 32 full-time employees. 24 of them are law enforcement officers and 1 part-time social worker who is funded through a grant. Our budget is $3.5 million a year. We're looking for personnel additions. In 2026, we're looking for a full-time dispatcher. In 2027, we're looking for a full-time police officer. And for the next 3 years, a police officer every year. The reasons behind this, the National Fire Protection Agency recommends 2 dispatchers to be working at the same time. That is to prevent the one dispatcher from being overwhelmed if there are multiple large incidents. A good example of this is our dispatchers don't only just handle 911 calls, they're handling our regular calls. They're helping people in the lobby, and they're also have to keep their ears open for, bless you, the units on the street are calling them, and the fire department. A great example is the shooting on May 12th. In this, we had 1 dispatcher working. Thank goodness we didn't get another major incident or any incidents that night, because it was a breaking point that night. As for additional fire department personnel, we want to bring the town into compliance with a lot of the other departments in the nation. The FBI uniform crime reporting has Northborough right now at 1.5 officers per thousand. The national average is 2.5 per thousand, so we are below that. The rationale for requesting the extra officers, better service, more proactive policing, and serving the community better. Our current staffing right now is day shift has 3 officers, the evening shift has 4, and the midnight shift has 3. But when you factor into vacation time, comp time, training days, people going to court, and sick days, we can drop to as little as 2 people on the day shift, 3 people on the evening shift, and 2 in the overnights. How does it compare to other towns in the Commonwealth that are our size, approximately 16,000? It can range from as little as 23 all the way up to 43 to 48 officers, which communities between our population range. We currently stand at 24. Compared to the towns in and around us in Worcester County, Auburn has 43 with a population of about slightly under 17,000. Charlton with 13,000 residents has 24, just like us. Southborough has 10,000 people. They have 21. And we're significantly busier than them. Capital items. We went over the cruisers. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Our major purchases are, for 2026, the department is looking for $140,000. $100,000 of that will be going towards body-worn cameras, and $40,000 would be going to replacing our current cameras. We are the only community in the surrounding area that does not have body-worn cameras. Shrewsbury, Westboro, Southboro, Worcester, they all have it. The reason for it is it increases transparency, officer safety, and liabilities. The biggest challenge, though, is the cloud storage and the overwhelming discovery requests that comes with it. The purchase of the body-worn cameras are usually covered by grants. We are currently looking for some, and we will be applying. But there is an ongoing cost of about $10,000 annually for the cloud storage of those videos. It'll be covered for the first 2 years, but after that, we'll have to put it into our budget. Like I said, the biggest problem is freedom of information, and it can overwhelm staffs. Our current tasers are approximately 10 years old. The shelf life of them is usually 5 years. We were, again, lucky. We had long-term warranties on them that has helped us when there has been issues. But currently, Taser has elected to not support the X2, which is the one we carry, no longer. They will not repair them. They won't touch them. It's an electronic device. It's very sophisticated. We don't want them to fail when the officers need them the most. So, for 2027, we're looking for an upgrade in our cameras and the security of the building. About $220,000 is the projected cost. The camera system that we have now is a HIC Vision camera. In 2022, the Federal Communications Commission ruled that the technology was a potential hazard to networks that can be compromised. The law banning this equipment was signed by President Biden. So we have the system right now. It is 12 to 15 years old. In 2024, we spent $9,000 repairing issues with it. As for the security upgrades, we are looking for a better proximity readers to record when people are leaving, coming in and out of the building, cell checks, which are very important to us. And lastly, maybe a security gate behind the station. Originally posted for 2026, but now we're bumping it up to 2028, would be the communications center upgrade, about $160,000. Our communications center, I know some people have come in to see it. It is basically a hodgepodge of 80s technology mixed with 90s technology all the way up. It is a Band-Aid and will fail eventually, but we're looking to totally streamline it, upgrade it, and become into the first century this year. It's bad. Second to last thing we're looking for, 2029, we're looking for $100,000 for a police station feasibility study. Currently, the building was built in 1989. In 2029, the building will be approximately 41 years old. For 2030, we are looking to upgrade our radios, our portable radios, at a cost of $220,000. Why are they important? Currently, Northborough does not have the ability to speak officer to officer to any other surrounding towns. They're on every other community's gone to UHF or 800 bands. A great example would be the standoff next to Walmart of the armed suspect. I don't have the picture with me. I have a presentation that you guys can look at. You'll see the command center has an officer from the 6 communities that helped us that night. And the reason why they were there is we had made the perimeter, and any information that we needed to get to them, we needed one of their officers there to relay it to them. So if the suspect was moving, they wouldn't be able to speak to each other. So it is a concern to us, but I'll let the fire department speak more about the radios. He has a better presentation on that. Again, this will be available online. Thank you for your time.
I apologize. I thought you had 2 slides. We loaded the ones in, but I know there was a second one that came to me. I'm trying to get it.
That's okay.
If you want to turn your eardrop on, I can show you the picture of the cops standing around to communicate in that situation. But I can send you that. So I have fire next. Chief?
evening. As I'm sure most of you know, I'm Dave Prempton, Fire Chief and Management Director, and those of you who have been unfortunate enough to listen to me before know that I like to talk. So in order to try and minimize some of that, I've tried to keep the presentation at the 10,000-foot level, and all the information, the dollars, the exact numbers are all in the paperwork that you can all pick up and take a look at. So I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty here because we would be here forever. I'll talk a little bit about the station momentarily, but for now I just want to give you like a 10,000-foot overview of who we are. So we run 4 shifts, 5 guys a shift. When I say 5 guys, that is in general. Right now we have all males, but we're hoping to be able to put some female firefighters on at some point in time. Administratively, we have a chief emergency management and emergency management director. That's myself. We have a deputy chief. We have administrative assistant. That's our administrative staff. We have 1 part-time hazmat assistant who does LEPC, helps with emergency management, helps with ambulance billing, does our grant writing, and a few other things. Again, as I mentioned, the staff is made up of 4 shifts, 5 people a shift. That's an officer, and 4 firefighter paramedics a shift. Overview of what we do, and these are just the numbers up here were of about 2 weeks ago. We do about 68% EMS calls. So far, we've transported 720 patients, interacted with 850, and we have 5,332 loaded miles. That means from the scene to the hospital. It doesn't include from us to the hospital, from us to the scene, or from the hospital back. So that's where our mileage on our ambulances are really racking up like crazy. Year to date, we've done about, and this again, I said, about a couple weeks old, we've done about 1,343 incidences. What do? We do specialty details. So we do welding details, we do blasting details, we do fire watches. Somebody's sprinkler system's down and they need to do some work on it. We provide off-duty crews to come back and take care of that. We do public outreach through the schools. We do training. So far, just this year, we've done over 1,300 hours in training. We do fire prevention, emergency management, LEPC, which is a local emergency planning committee. We do the comprehensive emergency management plan, the hazard mitigation plan, the hazard materials response plan, 21E request. But what's important about all of this stuff, I say we do it. We do it with all of them, because we can't do any of this without all of them. And that starts with town hall, goes to finance, goes to IT, all the way through. Right? They all help us, we all help them. We're an incredible team. Without all them, none of this would get done. That's really important to understand that. I wanted to cover our capital replacement plan. And people always ask, well, when do you replace fire trucks? Why do you replace fire trucks when you do? So I just wanted to give you a real quick overview for that. So engines are replaced every 20 years. They spend 10 years as a first due, 10 years as a backup, and then they're replaced. Why that number that we picked? Why don't you pick mileage? Why don't you pick hours? Because as the lieutenant mentioned, with the National Fire Protection Association and the Insurance Service Organization set certain hours or certain years that truck is qualified for. An engine is qualified for 20 years. After 20 years, it is no longer counted. That affects your insurance. It affects your homeowner's insurance and your business insurance, our ISO rating. Our ISO rating is currently a 3.3Y. Highest you can get is a 1. Lowest you can get is a 10. I'm pretty proud of a 3.3Y. That's pretty good. Okay. But in order to do that, we need to maintain this replacement schedule. The tower ladder is replaced every 20 years. So is our tanker. That is, those are individual trucks. We don't have multiple of those. Engines, we have 2 engines. So we can run a first due and a second due. Squad and forestry are replaced every 12 to 13 years. Ambulances, the first due, second due, and third due, they're replaced every 3 to 4 years. Why? Our current first due ambulance right now has over 100,000 miles on it. It was supposed to be replaced 2 years ago, which is when we placed the order. If those of you who were at town meeting may remember, we still haven't seen it. We're hoping to see it sometime in December. So, fingers crossed. Command vehicles are replaced every 10 to 15 years. And the additional capital items we have that fall under the capital improvement program. Now, this isn't turnout gear, which can be like $3,000 or $4,000 a set. These are things like our self-contained breathing apparatus, our portable radios, our UTV. Very expensive items. What we do with these is we put them on our 10-year, and we have a 10-year plan, which normally the board sees a 6-year plan. You guys see the 6-year plan, but we've always had a 10-year plan. And we start seeking out grants to replace these types of items. So far, we've replaced our SCBA, our portable radios. We're able to replace those. Over $500,000 worth of replacement items we've been able to get through grants. So that's terrific. And we still intend on keeping going down that road. So our 5-year plan looking forward is we have an ambulance replacement that we're looking to do in 2026 for $550,000. When I started in the fire service in the late 70s, early 80s, we were talking about $100,000 for an ambulance. Now we're talking about $550,000 for an ambulance. The squad replacement is $450,000 in the command vehicle. We're looking to replace both of those in 2027. 2028 is open right now. I try not to make sure that every year is filled. That's not our goal. We replace them when we need to replace them, not just, oh, we have an open year, let's put something in there. So we keep those open. This is the big one, the tower ladder, $2,500,000. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be more than that. Trucks are going up every year. We ordered one truck for $900,000. A year later, that same truck was over $1 million. Okay? It's insane. So they go up crazy. And then we have another ambulance replacement scheduled for 2030. Okay? I want to talk about the big plans that we have. So number one big plan, it's not up here for a reason, is the fire station. Why is the fire station not up here? Because this is not a meeting to talk about the fire station. Otherwise, we'd be here all night long. We all know 41 to 43 million, right, Mitch? That's the number we're looking at right now. I have a presentation coming up for the financial planning and appropriations on the 6th. We'll be going over it, similar one that we just did for the select board. I could talk for hours about that. I want to talk about some other things. So this important one here is, this is our public safety radio upgrade that we talked about. The select board was very generous, and they gave us $30,000 in July to conduct a study of our current system. And as the lieutenant mentioned, our system is hodgepodge. Every system in the Northeast kind of was built on, let's have a radio. Bob's got a radio, we'll use his. And as departments grew, we just kind of threw stuff out there. We threw voters out there. We threw repeaters out there. Oh, let's do this. Let's do that. And it's kind of a system that's put together. Our newest equipment is about 25 years old, is our newest equipment. In order to replace some equipment now, we have to go to eBay because they don't make replacement parts anymore for them. We are on VHF. Everyone around us is on 800 digital, 800 analog, 800 UHF. We are very fortunate in that the portables that we bought through a grant are multi-band, multi-channel. So I can talk to anybody in our region. I can flip to an 800 frequency on a portable or a low band or a UHF. We can talk to anyone. So that's terrific. The problem is dispatch can't necessarily. So what we want to do is we want to do this study. It's multi-part. Currently, we have one quote. We're hoping the 2 more quotes we're supposed to receive by mid-August. Chris is supposed to get those, Demos, right? I believe he's working on that. He's going to get those quotes. When we get those, the intent is to have that study done to develop the replacement and where we need to go. This isn't, that $30,000 isn't taking care of it. It's going to be about $3 to $5 million to fix ours. Marlboro just did it for 5-point-something million. Shrewsbury just did it for around $5 million. So you're talking a significant amount of money to do this. That's why we want the plan. That's why when the select board said, yeah, here's this $30,000. So it's not, we're going to do this next week. How can we do this? How can we piece this in? How can we make it affordable to the people? Can we replace just the $140,000 for the inside of at the dispatch furniture and all that, and then do the radios, or do we do the radios first? And that's why, as Demos mentioned, that number was pushed out to 28, so we can get these numbers and have a better number for you guys as we move ahead. Really important, okay? This is why, right? We have 6 transmit sites right now, only 5 of them are operational. And this is, when I say public safety, I'm talking fire EMS, police, public works, and the schools. We've already sat down with the schools. We've brought them in on this because it's important. The only schools that can talk directly to the PD right now is Algonquin. None of the other schools can. That's a problem. They should be able to. So that's why we thought it was critical to bring them in to this whole study so they're involved in this. Our workstations are out of date. The Church Street site should be putting out 100 watts. It only puts out 50 watts. That's great. That's our main site. That's what we use for our main transmitting site. And we already talked about the interoperability issue. The last thing I want to talk to you about is line personnel. Now, we came before the select board and we got permission to apply for a SAFER grant. The SAFER is Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. Firefighters and police officers love acronyms. We do as many as we possibly can. So that's what SAFER stands for. We were given permission to apply for a SAFER grant for 8 people, which would increase our minimum staffing per shift from 5 to 7. we need those people, whether we get the SAFER grant or not. So we do need those people. And in the plans in the back is how we intend on, if we didn't get the SAFER grant, what our recommendation is for doing that. It's not to go out next year and put 8 people on, because that's just not feasible. It isn't. The SAFER grant allows that, but it's not feasible. So we have that in there. I really recommend you take a look at it. The shift will be a mix of paramedic and lieutenants, and paramedics and basics. And at some point in time, we'll be adding a lieutenant's position so we can control that span of control, so we don't have one guy trying to, or one officer trying to control too many people. So that's the intent of that. On the administrative side, we want to eventually convert that hazardous material person to a full-time community risk reduction officer. The fire service is really becoming more proactive. We've always been reactive, right? Something happens, we go and we fix it. That's what we do. We're becoming more proactive. And we've almost worked ourselves out of building fires because of all these darn codes we created. So that's one of the things we want to do. We want to look at an emergency medical services officer, a training officer, a department mechanic. This isn't in the next year. This is long-term, so I want you to understand that this is something, again, look at the plan. You guys, the town pays the department heads to say, this is what we need. You guys then make the decision as to how we're going to fund that, or if we're going to fund it. So that's very important to understand. That is my presentation. I wanted to keep it as short as possible. I'm sure you'll have questions, but all the information, again, is in those handouts. Thank you very much.
So I think last is just Public Works, and then we'll move on to, we'll move on to questions for any of the department heads regarding what they've talked about. But Scott. Well, I'm sure that
Scott Charpentier, Public Works Director. Everybody gave you a brief explanation of the departments. Well, that's what we do, kind of everything that everybody else doesn't do. Our operating budget's about $10 million a year, so we're talking about a 5-year projection on operating, so that's $50 million. In our capital plan, we have about $13 million worth of requests. I'll go through some of the capital stuff quickly. A lot of it's reoccurring things, and then I'll get into how we can transition over to the operational side. So like I said, we have a 5-year capital plan. It's got $13.2 million worth of items in it. A portion of it is reoccurring needs. Roadway maintenance, we have $300,000 a year we've had for a number of years allocated toward roadway maintenance. That's done, allowed us to maintain our roadway condition in town. We increased it a little bit. When you look at a roadway condition, it's kind of like a grade in school. 10 years ago, we were a grade 71, a low C minus. Now we're a 75, a solid C. So that is every year in the capital plan, we see it there. We've implemented a couple other reoccurring capital components, sidewalks and drainage. This past fiscal year was the first year that's been incorporated. $300,000 a year, but again, that's another reoccurring, every single year item. $300,000, whether it's sidewalks or drainage, ongoing. Another reoccurring capital component you'll see now that we have a facilities department and we understand the conditions of our buildings is systematic building improvements. That includes envelope stuff like windows, paint, roofs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, improvements to carpet, like the library director was saying, and replacement of furniture at the senior center. Again, those are going to be reoccurring capital items you'll see over and over again at the town meeting microphone. The vast majority of that $13 million is for equipment replacement. All of the equipment replacement shown in the capital improvement plan is in-kind replacement. We need a truck, we replace a truck. With the exception of one vehicle, which is a hook lift. It's a unique vehicle. As the needs of the department expand, my hope is that we can reduce our rolling stock, which is the thing with the wheels and the engine and the steering wheel, and get a hook lift that you can put different things on the back so that hook lift can do 5 things as opposed to buying 5 different chassis. That's the only new piece of equipment. Everything else is replacements. We have a pretty programmatic replacement schedule, similar like PD and FT. We have 10 large trucks. We replace one every other year. That gets 20 years out of the trucks. By 20 years later, those vehicles have seen a lot of abuse, and it's time for them to be replaced. The smaller trucks, those are the large Mack trucks. The smaller trucks, we have 14 of them. I'm sorry, we have 14 of them. We replace one every other year. So we have a system going. We replace the little ones, those years we'll put in another smaller piece of equipment. Big trucks, we'll parallel those with other pieces of equipment. There's industry standards on how long these things last. We're a lot different than a contractor. When a contractor's piece of equipment goes down, he simply postpones his job. When Chief Parenti says, you know, we've got to block off a road because a culvert failed, I need sandbags and I need front end loaders, we can't tell him to wait a couple weeks. So it's important that our stuff is open and available and ready to be used. When you look in the capital plan, there's a lot of standalone projects that are in there as well. We got $3.7 million in the 5-year plan. And there's a variety of funding mechanisms for them. I'll go through them quickly. We have a water enterprise fund that's strictly supported by the water rates and the water users. We have a dam removal project listed in the capital plan for $500,000. It's going to be far more than that, but we're expecting to get a grant from the state to assist us in that removal. That'll help. We'll get rid of an asset that we don't need, and it's an expense we don't need to incur. We also have some water main replacements. Water mains get old, you need to replace them. Again, that's the user fees for the water department. That doesn't have any impacts on taxes. Same thing happens on the sewer side. We do I&I elimination every handful of years. I think we have 4.25 in the out years, $425,000 for I&I elimination. It's mandated by the state, but it also provides the community with additional sewer capacity for further development and expansion. There's some CPA projects that we have. I work with the rec department quite a bit on these. There's ones like some improvements to the Memorial Field parking lot. That parking lot is kind of mayhem when you go there. It's not really a parking lot. It's more like a poorly thought out rectangle of pavement. And then the stairs going down to the fields aren't the safest stairs in the world. That would be CPA eligible. Ellsworth and McAfee, we've been talking for years about getting a building there that has proper lavatories and facilities. That's well needed, and that would be a CPA eligible project. So when you look through all the DPW capital, outside of equipment, some of the standalone stuff, there's really not a lot of general fund items. One thing we've been neglecting is some of the larger bridges. We tend to be reactive with our bridges. Church Street Bridge, one of the beams failed, so we run to town meeting and get money to replace it. Otis Street Bridge, same thing. We run to town meeting. We know there are some bridges that are in rough shape. We get reports every 2 years from DOT on every single bridge in town. It's important that we start to programmatically put that into our plans going forward, so that when Jason puts together his funding projections 5 and 10 and 15 years out, we can see there's something coming down the road, and those are borrowing type of projects. The yard waste item you'll see in the capital plan, we take in yard waste from residents at the highway garage. Mass DEP requires us to get it out of there every year. We cannot have any of that stuff have a birthday. If it does, it's considered a waste disposal site, and we need to be permitted. We're not. We can't be permitted. It's not the right location, and it's too small. So we spend about $150,000 a year to remove yard waste from the highway garage. A lot of our peer communities have waste disposal areas where they hire a third-party entity, town land, they manage it, they roll over the windrows, they grind up the brush. After a handful of years, you have a marketable product in loam, and eventually it becomes a viable net zero use. So the guy running it is making enough money, so we're not paying any money for it. You got to find the right spot, you got to find the right materials, so there's a matter of doing a study to implement that. So we have that in the capital plan. On the operating side, one of the goals I would have is to try to get some of these reoccurring items built into the operating budget. We do have $300,000 a year in the operating budget for roadways. It took a number of years to get that built in. It would be nice to have a similar program for sidewalks and drainage. We hear a lot. I get emails weekly about poor sidewalk conditions. Having a funding stream that's predictable and reliable, I think would be beneficial to everybody, as opposed to being reactive. Same thing on the drainage side. We had a culvert fail at Lincoln Street. You know, we'd had to divert $300,000 of pavement money to fix that before school opened. Currently, we had a culvert fail on Church Street. You'll see a big patch over by Fay. And then Howard Street, right before Kaiser Cemetery, the culvert failed there. You'll see a big patch there. Those are the same culverts, same era. There's two other on Church Street, same construction, same era. They're going to fail. Having a predictable funding stream for these proactive replacements as opposed to reactive, I think would be beneficial to the community. It's going to take a long time to build these things in like it did with the paving, but I think it's the best for everybody. On the staffing side, the staffing down at the highway garage, I'll do this because everybody else did it. Back in 1980 was 15 people. We're down to 11 now. A lot of that is due to more efficient operations. We have better equipment. We outsource a lot of work. But we're getting more and more unfunded mandates coming in. We have MS4 compliance requirements. That's a federal government EPA stormwater regulation that we have to comply with. It requires twice the street sweeping we used to do, additional catch basin cleaning, reporting, inspecting, maintaining some of the drainage detention basins you'll see in some of your neighborhoods. There's no funding for it. There's no staffing for it. We're just doing our best to absorb that into our operations. Those types of things are only growing. Speaking of growing, one of the bigger issues that we see coming up more and more over the past 5 or 8 years is roadside vegetation. All that knotweed, that bamboo you see up and down the roads, that wasn't there 10 years ago. We could go through town and roadside mow once, and we were good. Now you cut that in the spring, and by end of the summer, the intersection is blind. So we're getting to the point where either there's got to be a mitigating measure to treat that stuff, or just cut it more often for safety. We just don't have the staff to do it. We're not built to do that. We're built to do what was done 15 years ago. Phasing in staff isn't easy. Everybody understands that, we've been running mean and lean for a number of years. We have a facilities department, which I'm blessed to have a facility manager and somebody to help him. But the needs will continue to grow. So, as indicated in prior presentations, there is pent-up needs in town. DPW is managing with what we have, but it's continuing to grow. Precipitation is changing, roadside conditions are changing, vegetation, and they're washing out. You get these really intense rains, the country drainage, we call it, where there's no catch basins, no curbing, things just kind of wash off to the edge. When you get these massive intense rains, the roadway edge washes out. People's lawns wash out. We got to get out there and treat that. That's stuff we didn't do 10 years ago. So the level service piece is the service is changing. Even though you want level service, the service is expanding. So there'll be need for additional staff. But I think the most important thing for my department is that we have predictable and reliable funding to correct the deficiencies we have in our infrastructure. Do I click now?
We've thrown a lot of information out there, and I appreciate everyone's attention, but, Greg was at our meeting today. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, you haven't met with the school districts and the school committees and so forth.
Yeah, so I have not met with the school committees and talked about what our future plans are. I would point people to our budget book that is online. It does talk about 5-year projections, capital expenditures. I think we understand that we are the largest department of the town's budget, and we take that very seriously and understand that a budget increase for the school department has a significant impact what other departments can do. So I think from our perspective, maintaining level services, maintaining continuity of increases at 3%, really has supported continuity of learning for our students. But I will be meeting with the school committees, both Northborough pre-K through 8 and region, and talking about goals, plans for the future, and what to expect in terms of budget projections. But again, a lot of the information is in the budget book that can be found on the district website, and would be happy to answer any questions.
So given that, does anyone have questions for any of the department heads? I have 2, but I'll wait for mine. So, because I'm curious to know, like Dana, if you install these remote cameras in any place, would there be any staffing stability or reduction if you install things? Can it be cheaper to run it if you bought those capital items?
So, let me come up with a mic in here.
I should be going first, I apologize. I just putting it out there.
Pick it on me.
Everybody's shy, I don't want to.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, all these installations that I'd like to do, same amount of staff that we currently have. I have no intentions of having any new staff for any of that. We'd basically be doing the same amount of work that we already do. It's just having better permanent equipment that doesn't break as fast and is much more professional, much more easy to use. It's same level of work. It's just different scenario. So, yeah.
Well,
I have a question for Hinder also. Go ahead, Lisa.
well, it would be reduced a little bit, because like tonight, for example, you said it took you a couple hours to set this up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, so that would
I'm sorry.
reduce.
Not in terms of actually
Yeah.
at the meeting, but yes, 100%.
So you would be saving time and.
When we set this stuff up, yeah, sometimes it takes hours or days. Like annual town meeting, talking like 4 days, to set that stuff up and then test it. And sometimes something doesn't work, and you try to fix it or whatever. Literally, right before everybody showed in the door today, I come to realize that the plug that goes into our little video switcher was not charging it, so Owen had to go and get me one. And it's little teeny little things like that. So yes, yeah, it's a huge time saver for our staff. So yeah.
Dana, I have a question of what could we do to prepare for the even greater loss from the cable providers? That percentage that we used to get from them that has dropped, and as more and more people are working to move away from it.
Yeah.
It's not going, those contracts are really not gonna be worth much in another 5 years.
So, I mean, when our 5-year contract with Verizon is up, are they even going to grant us another one? I sure hope so. Charter in 2033? Don't know. Probably not, Unfortunately, the cable companies, I don't know, they, to them, they look at us as lost revenue. So for instance, for eons, we've been trying to get internet revenue. God, if we even got 1%, I can make this place look like Hollywood. You know what I mean? It'd be crazy. But honestly, it's me having been through this and been in this business for such a long time. I'm not holding my breath. It's just, I really don't think it's going to happen, And I'm sorry, real quick, again, I talked to so many other people in this industry, and there's very few of them that are municipalities. Most of them are nonprofits. A lot of them are turning into municipalities, or they're doing the exact same thing, where I think is it Oxford or Upton? It's one of the two, where same thing. Just this year, they just started to pull in funds from their general fund because basically everybody else is in the exact same boat right now, where they're at the end of the line, and they have to make some pretty tough decisions. So,
Is it something that anybody's gone to the legislature about yet to try to get some inroads there?
Oh, yes, it's been going on forever. And I joke about this, and we all joke. This is not serious, but we all joke when something gets shut down at the State House. We say, "Oh, some cable company lobbyist bought somebody a steak dinner." It's just a joke. But I'm online TV here. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things where I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't see anything legislation happening where they're going to come to save us for this kind of stuff. So, and some places say, "Oh, we'll just try to get grants," or we'll try. Those are one-time revenues that are usually for a specific project or something. It's not going to have anything to do with operational costs. So, in my opinion, and a lot of other people in this industry, I was just talking to Karen, who runs the Westboro station. They're a nonprofit, and same thing. They're saying, "Yep, pretty soon we're just going to have to start getting absorbed into the town for this stuff." So, and honestly, I feel like it's probably one of the best things to do. Not to go on a big rant or anything, but like I said, only a portion of the cable providers are paying for the service, but we provide it to everybody. We work with everybody. So to me, I think it makes perfect sense for us to be absorbed by the town entirely. And we talked about this where, 10 years down the road, when it comes to the point where here's how much it's in cable, and it starts to go down, and we start subsidizing it to eventually 100% of us is going to be town funded, will we still be the same town department? Are we going to be absorbed into IT? I don't know yet,
You're going right into my question, so this is good. So, all these different platforms, are you able to get meaningful data on listenership and viewership as to specifically what programming people are?
Yes.
Because I will say that we had, at town meeting, we filled the place, and that's about 1/4 of 1% of our population.
Yeah.
Of the whole, all the taxpayers fill the auditorium, we consider that a big turnout for town meeting, right? So,
yeah.
How meaningful is it? And so do we have that kind of information available?
We have everything except for, believe it or not, the cable channels.
Cable, yeah.
Because you'd need Nielsen ratings, and we're non-commercial, you can't do that.
But you're able to tap into podcasts, the YouTube streams, you can see the
Oh, yeah.
unique users.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can see, what app or if they're using it on a phone or that, it's, all the same. It's funny when we're doing any of these live meetings, like we are like right now, when you're doing annual town meeting, there's a little graph when a contentious item comes up, comes up when it's done, kind of goes back down a little bit, it's funny, to see that kind of stuff in real time.
Because what I'm getting at is you have 1/4 of 1% of a town that's at town meeting, and then maybe 0.5% of them have any clue as to anything that's in the warrant book when they get there. And they're making all the decisions. And so if we know this podcast, it gets more listeners, or this time, well, maybe that's the time that different parts of the town could
Yeah,
feed
using metrics to
try
plan
to get
out
people
when to provide, yeah.
educated and get more interest, because you end up, and on night 3, whatever warrant article is still not decided is going to be picked by, a handful of townies that are still showing up, and there's almost nobody left.
Yeah, sure.
So I think having meaningful broadcast ability, and not just throw it out on cable TV, because I don't know any of my friends that still have cable. Like, I don't know anyone that has cable.
Sure.
I'm sure someone in this room does, but I don't know any of them. So it's good that, you can actually like come up with really hard data as to what's reaching more people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, except for TV, which is crazy, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure.
2 quick questions. One, you're at the high school.
Yeah.
Is that stable long-term? And that might be a question for you, might be a question for Greg.
We had a meeting not too long ago. Thought was you guys are looking at space, but nothing right at the moment of any kind of long-term plans.
Yeah, I think that when we look at the high school, we also look at central office administrative space. So the town of Southborough is currently looking at a project which would impact the central office administrative space in Southborough that we currently have set. So we need to find a place to relocate. We'll need to study that, but some of the study will be, is there space at Algonquin? Is there space in other town buildings?
Sure.
So it's something we'll look at. I don't think in the near future it's something that...
if it happens, it happens,
So that's a big unplanned capital expense if we need to.
If we have to
studio
move,
for you
that's
a big deal.
huge.
Especially
Huge
because
deal.
when the town built Algonquin, the expectation was cable would be located there. That's a whole complicated thing to unwrap. My other question is actually non-financial. Volunteers, typically cable access going back a number of years, had a lot of an active volunteer base that helped out, not to replace staff,
Yeah,
but
sure.
often can do sporting events and things like that.
Sure.
Has that dwindled away, or is that trying to
There's
build that up?
some mixed stuff with that. Again, I've been in this industry for a super long time. I've worked at many different stations. In my time of doing classes and outreach and all kinds of stuff, your return on investment for volunteers is incredibly low, especially now. It's different between adults and kids. Kids are usually more into it. They're more active. They think it's fun. You get two types. You get usually the people who get it and they're really into it, and then you get kids who realize, oh well, this is more professional broadcast. I want to be a YouTuber, and but parents have been incredibly helpful and successful when it comes to things like sports events, things like that. They're very reliable. It gets them into the games for free, whatever. But quite often when I do any kind of outreach for classes, 101, that kind of stuff, they show up and then they disappear. So it's like I said, your return on investment's pretty low with that stuff, unfortunately. So, yeah, sure.
Yeah, just one question. For the equipment upgrades at locations like the high school, is there an expectation that, obviously it's regional high school, so there'd be some cost sharing between Northborough and Southborough, right? The cost for that wouldn't all be on Northborough?
Well,
So I can speak to that. So currently, we do not charge rental for the space that's used by Northborough Cable. It's not something we're looking to do, but that is something technically that should be, we should be renting the space because it's not just the town of Northborough space, it's also Southborough.
Okay. And then, obviously it all rolls up to one budget, but for upgrades, say, for the library or for different school buildings, is there any level of expectation that those different departments would flex or make room in their budget for some or all of those equipment upgrades?
Some, like I've talked to Jen a little bit about this. We talked about this project, where the money's going to come from. So we're still kind of talking about that. We're talking about potentially a grant or some other. Yeah. Thumbs up on the grants. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, but there might be some talk on that. So.
And we might be talking about that in an upcoming select board meeting.
Sure. Okay. All right.
Other department-related questions or any other cable ones?
Got a senior center question. You talked about the bistro and the employees are self-funded. I'm curious how that split is. Is the revenue pretty much equaling the expense of the bistro?
So we don't have any, there's no real cushion, it's
Right.
pretty much a net zero is what we operate.
Okay, that was my assumption. Thanks.
I have a quick question for our library director. The 30-10 hour split for, is the library trustee only paying for salary or is there a share of the benefits? I'm just looking at what the long-term impact is.
The town has been paying the benefits for 2 years.
All full, okay.
Yes.
So it's just that 10 hours of salary.
Just the 10 hours.
All right, thank you.
Which is just shy of $14,000.
Anyone else?
Does it have to be a cable question?
No, it could be anything that anybody presented.
Oh, okay. So I have a question for Mr. Federico. If the hours for the second person were increased to full-time, would that allow time for us to capture fees on zoning infractions?
Zoning infractions?
Yes,
I've said this 1,000 times. Sending a fine out for zoning infractions is a big waste of time. Usually we can get zoning compliance with a phone call or a letter. By the time it gets to writing fines, we're going to court. Okay? 101 Colbert Street is a prime example. We're still going to court with that guy. I can't tell you how many fines I've written them and they ignore them. Okay? And the courts ignore them too, until you bring a civil case. To be honest with you, functionally, they're useless.
But administratively, if we saw a zoning, if we had extra hours of manpower, if we saw a zoning violation, we could take whatever steps administratively to remedy that. We would do more of that than we're doing now.
We do more court action than we do actually writing fines and tickets.
Okay.
Is there any state-imposed penalty for falling behind that 30-day threshold, or is that just like, hey, guys, get better?
What's that? So the permit issuance?
Right, so the permit issuance, I submit, 30 days go by, I can start doing whatever I'm doing. The state finds out that you are in excess of that over a certain period of time. Is there impact to...
I've not heard of any...
But they just say like, hey, you have to be better. There's no then like fining of the department or the town for not keeping up on them.
There's no state-sponsored punitive...
I'm sure there are plenty of people in the community who would be wondering, if we add the person, how many days turnaround do you think you could get to?
I'd like to get it done in 2 weeks.
I bet there'd be a lot of people happy to hear that.
And if
Thank you.
Because to be honest with you,
Yeah, I don't, that's not what I'm referring to.
Based upon what I'm hearing in the clouds.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, they're all saying it's taking me 5 weeks to get a permit, it's taking me 6 weeks to get a permit. We have 30 days to look at the permit at the first blush. If the application is not correct, we reject it and we say you need to correct X, Y, Z. At that point, it's back on the clock stops. At that point, it's back on the applicant to get us the information we require. Okay?
Yeah, so I guess, are you differentiating between first review and final, like, permission allowance, or are you?
First review.
First review, that's what I was trying to figure out too. We were in some penalty area with not
I
getting
mean,
through that.
fortunately, you know, I've got people, my admins, they will let me know with a list of items that are coming up on 30 days. I'll put them straight to the top of
Yeah,
the
okay.
list. You know, because, you know, people will start, if, I've only had one person start work without the 30-day review. And he still has to conform to the building code.
Sure.
So when he started, and there was a bunch of problems with it, this is an HVAC system, he had to tear it out and do it again.
Yeah, I don't think people
So
are
it didn't go-
incentivized
it didn't
to
go
have
himself
you
any
take
favors by
quite so
starting
long.
to work.
Yeah.
Well, when you get to day 31,
Yeah.
right, the homeowner or whoever took the permit, they could just go right to the state Board of Appeals, and then that would remove the town from town's jurisdiction for that, the life of that permit, right?
No.
It does not? That's
No, the Board
incorrect?
of Appeals is not gonna do that. The Board of Appeals is gonna probably give me a call and say, or somebody from, PBRS is probably gonna say, you've got us a couple of 30-day, issues.
Okay.
You know, what are you doing to keep up with it?
Okay, because that is one way they can get to that board, right, is more than 30 days with no action.
To do what?
To go to the state Board of Appeals.
And
That's
have-
one of the,
And have them do what? I'm not understanding.
have a hearing. I mean, I think I'm.
About issuing the permit?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not what I was.
The Board of Appeals can do
Concerned
anything they
about.
want.
Yeah.
All right, just 1 second. The BBRS is the group that you go to if you had to complain. But what Bob is saying, if you go 30 days, he doesn't take any action and it's all complete, that person can just start building. He doesn't even need to go to Boston.
Yeah.
But if he goes to Boston, they're gonna call Bob and say, hey, this guy's complaining. And they'll call me as well. And I'll state this with the system we have in place, and we just instituted this because this has happened. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but from a process system standpoint, we had the contractor telling the homeowners a story, something's happening with the building permit, that wasn't happening. So now in the system, when we email the contractor, that same email goes to the homeowner. So it's a requirement now that the homeowner has to give their information, or the contractor has to give the homeowner's email. So we can email both at the same time, so they don't get to tell the story, I haven't heard from the building department, because they're gonna get the email, I heard from the building department. So I've investigated probably 5 or 6 of those scenarios since I've been here, and that was our solve. So I don't wanna belabor that, but if anybody wants Bob and I to go to a meeting and talk about it at length, we will be happy to. But I have the chief, one question, ISO, what happens to us as residents if that ISO rating gets to higher than 3 point?
If our ISO rating is not maintained at 3.3Y, your insurance rates go up.
What insurance? My homeowner's insurance?
Your homeowner's insurance rates go up.
What is ISO?
Insurance Service Organization.
Go ahead, do it again.
It's the Insurance Service Organization. What they do is they come out and they rate the fire department, they rate the dispatch center, they rate our water system, so DPW gets involved in it. They rate buildings, so there's all these things that get rated, and then they come up with a rating for your fire safety rating for your community. The highest you can get is 1. So you'll see, if you ever see a Los Angeles Fire Department truck that says Class 1 Department, that's what it is. They're a Class 1 ISO department. There's not many of them. There's not many Class 3s. We're a 3.3Y. Once you start getting higher and higher, when you get 3, 4, once you get a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, your rates start to go up.
And the reason why I bring this up, I came from a community that had volunteer fire department, they're awesome. Everybody around Grafton shows up with many, many trucks and many, many people. But my ISO rating is higher. We pay more in insurance because we don't have a full-time.
It has to do with the number of people have. It looks at training. It looks at your water system, like how many hydrants do you have, and what's your, not just how many hydrants, but what's your flows. There's so much information that's looked at. Your communication system. Do you have a backup system? Are you current, or is your system allocated? So do you have generators at all your transmission sites, and are they all monitored? It's amazing the stuff they looked at.
And how can you
We're
reduce
doing
that?
this to help you save money.
Is there a way to reduce that number to 3.3Y? Is there a way?
Is there a way to get to 2.2Y? When I was in New Hampshire, I got my department to a 2.2Y.
Okay.
Not easy. It takes money, and it takes equipment, it takes people.
So go ahead.
I think this is an interesting metric to have a discussion about, and especially at town meeting when you're selling a fire station. I guess the other metric I'd like to understand and know better, and I don't need an answer tonight, is exactly what would happen to a resident's insurance. What percentage would it probably increase? And I'm not asking for an answer now, but maybe it's something we can look into.
That would be hard to tell you, but I can tell you, in a previous department, I had people call me and say, I can't get insurance because I don't live in your water district, and my insurance company dropped me. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Here's the dry hydrants we have, here's the, we have a lot of stagnant hydrants. We look at dry hydrants, we look at water sources, we look at pools. If there's a pool in there, we'll count that as if we need to. But I had people call me, they were losing their house. Their insurance company would no longer protect them because in that region, it was a 10. So different parts of town can be rated differently too. We're at 3.3Y across the town.
I would just like to have a better understanding.
Yeah, there has to
You
be,
talk
there
about
has to be
station
some kind of
response.
connective
Response
tissue.
metrics are a big part. How fast we get there, how long it takes us to get there. That's all part of the rating as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can we move, you want to move on to the meat and potatoes of this?
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
No, go ahead.
I have one more question about it. I hear an awful lot about maintenance, right? The carpeting here, what's going on at the senior center, what's going on at the police, everybody's maintenance at town hall. So we're all sorely behind maintaining these things. So is it the facilities manager's job now to be putting another type of a 5-year plan together that says, okay, here's a new building come in, 5 years, we're supposed to replace the carpeting, we're supposed to paint the walls or something like that, that works in the same idea as your vehicle replacement and your equipment replacement? Because it's also necessary to do, but it hasn't been done in so long, and the cost of when you don't maintain is so much greater than when you do. Who would be in charge of that? And who would start on that?
Through Sean.
So, this fiscal year was the first year that we had a facilities section under the capital improvement plan. We've always had DPW, police, fire, schools, administration. This year is the first year we had facilities. We included in FY '26 library carpet replacement, senior center room divider. For example, we're building up the operating budget in the facilities. It's a process, like we've indicated, like Ally was talking about, building up into the general fund. Some of these smaller, less than capital, but more than a vacuum cleaner type things. To shampoo all the carpets here could be $15,000, $20,000. Senior center could be $10,000 to do all the upholstery.
Right.
We're building that into our operating budget so we can have a cycle. Power wash the building this year, next year do the upholstery. So when there's $15,000 or $20,000 rolling in the operating budget, things like this stain can be addressed throughout the building. So yes, we are in the process of building that in.
And so, do you think that, where it may have come under Ally's budget for her things, or anybody else's in the buildings that need it, right now, do you all have that in your departments that would allow you to have a certain amount of money that's in maintenance?
No.
Nobody has
So
that.
the way the facilities department has broken out the budgets from the building directors are responsible for the specific needs of that building. So I'm gonna sound like an old man here, but the Dewey Decimal System, that's her responsibility, Jen's responsibility to maintain. The electric bill, well, if she leaves the lights on all night, that's her bill to deal with. More systematic things like exterior maintenance, floor maintenance, things like that, that's facilities. Cyclical replacement of furniture, that's facilities. If it's, replacing the cards in the Dewey Decimal System, that's her. So the senior center, the security system, that's us. The roof is us. The heating and ventilation system, that's us. The Parcheesi boards, that's her.
Okay. But the floors?
But-
Floors and maintenance and all that, okay.
But I was gonna say, to Lisa's point, though, like, there have been several asks for, you know, custodial services in other areas. Like, is that not something that a facilities department would manage for limited use spaces at least? And I'm not saying senior center is a limited use space, but like, you know, the police station probably needs its own person, but a place where the doors are shutting at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening and not used again until the next day. Because each one having its own is a lot different than a team being able to span out across.
Yeah, so we don't have individual custodial services for facilities, for each facility. We have a cleaning company. Before the facilities division was created, each building did their own thing.
Yeah, okay.
Some buildings had staff clean, other buildings had.
So, but you're moving in a direction where that's
We're
becoming
moving in a direction of
consolidated.
consolidating services.
Yeah, okay.
And in that process, you know, the cost went up. And we just actually bid out cleaning services again, and we have in that as a bid alternate, floor stripping and waxing, floor shampooing. We have it in our operating budget to do that. We look at the different buildings, cycle through. They're not all gonna get cleaned the first year, but hopefully by year 5, we've built it up adequately, so every 5 years, every floor is stripped and waxed, every carpet is shampooed, the upholstery is cleaned, some cycle, I don't know if 5 years is the one.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Thank you.
So the question then to follow with that, we gave you, was it 38,000 to do a facilities
Facility
overview?
condition assessment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were those things included in it?
Yes. Yeah, the database is well over 2,000 nodes. And it included furniture. It included permanent things, facade, windows, roofs, exteriors, hard physical elements inside, floors, walls, HVAC systems, doors would be part of it. Accessibility components to lavatories, entrances, entering offices that are open to residents. So in the veterans office at the senior center, is that handicap accessible? Can a person in a wheelchair get in there? Those are the items that were in there. And they identified, this carpet is old, it's past its useful life, it should be replaced.
Right.
That's all in there.
And is there any way we can get grants or some of that stuff?
Generally, maintenance and replacement, I don't see a lot of grants available for that. There are energy efficiency grants, you know, there's a lot of those. We are a green communities participant. So, you know, we did lighting here, LED lighting. We did LED lighting at the senior center. We're doing it at the town hall. We've done air gap sealing to reduce energy use. We did some work at Melican with some pumps and VFDs. So yeah, there is grants, but it's generally energy efficiency stuff.
Because we're going to have to come up with making more money as opposed to always just going to the town meeting and saying we need more. Because everybody wants more, but people are limited budgets. So.
We'd love to do more for less.
I started this with the Onion, right? We're still peeling an onion. So, you know, getting this in one place for facilities, we're learning more about the real need. And all those, the more we learn, the more it costs. So either we're going to be honest with everybody and say this is the cost, or we go back and just, but that doesn't exist. I can't do that because I've already peeled the onion in front of everybody. So can I move on to Jason? Because I want to get you guys out of here by 9:30. I'd love it to be 9, just so you know. More controllers?
Oh, sure.
So Jason is going to look at a lot of things thematically from the fire station to the safer grant. From a financial perspective, tie up those and then we'll do questions at the end.
There'll be multiple references to facilities as well as we go through my presentation. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about that some more in financial trend presentation. Yes, absolutely.
Some of the slides, when we tested this today, don't call me last minute Sally, but anyways, they didn't show up very well this fall. So they're going to be in the same order, but you can look at them on paper and nothing's changed. It's just used better on the paper, not on the slide. So if you want to straighten your
I like to put a lot of information out there, and it's hard to read, so they did their best to make it readable, but you can read along with this guidebook. I'll just talk for one moment about my department because you skipped over me to put me up all at once. I'm Jason Little, I'm the finance director. I am also the town accountant currently. The finance department is composed of 3 separate divisions: accounting, treasurer collector, and the tax assessor. Basically, there are 3 separate departments. We have 2 department heads here. Lisa Trost is the treasurer collector, and Lee Keo-Manavong is our principal assessor. They're the department heads for those 2 divisions. The accounting division's responsible for record keeping all the financial transactions for the town, including being the custodian of contracts and grant paperwork. We're also responsible for doing all of the financial reporting for the town. In addition to that, when we're working through our processes of paying bills and so forth, I should mention we handle the accounts payable through the accounting office. We're responsible for ensuring the town's compliance with federal, state laws, town meeting authorizations, and local bylaws. So in addition to that, the assessing division, let me just say briefly, they're responsible for assessing taxes. They don't decide how money's being spent. They simply are there to provide for making sure that the taxes that the town assesses are allocated fairly across the tax base. They also handle the abatement and exemption applications that come in from people that are applying for problems with their tax bills. We have a listing of exemptions on the assessor's webpage, so if you're a senior, if you're having trouble with your tax bill, I would encourage you to look at that. We've adopted every single tax relief option that we know of under Mass General Law. Going back, I should mention that all of these divisions are responsible and called for by Mass General Law. A lot of our responsibilities are called for within the law books. We offer all of the exemptions and senior tax relief that we can under Mass General Law. And if somebody knows of something we're not doing, let me know, because we would adopt that in a second to help people. So the assessor's office does a great job walking people through the applications. So Lee's staff is great at that. So contact his office, look at the assessor's webpage, and this is a notice for people at home. Check that. We've got a table on there that explains the different options that are available. So I recommend that people look at that. The treasurer collectors division, they handle our tax bills. Just a couple metrics about them. They send out, we've got approximately 6,000 property tax accounts that Lee maintains the data for in his computer-aided mass appraisal system called CAMA. And Lisa's responsible for sending bills out to all those taxpayers. We have 4 quarterly property tax bills. We send out 3 bills. One of them is a preliminary bill at the beginning of the year. So there's 2 subs on that. We save some money by not printing a second one. And then there's an actual tax bill that comes after the tax rate is set in the fall. Again, I'll end here with saying I give Lisa credit. We've got over 99% collection rate for our property taxes, and that's increasingly important in this financial environment. Taxes make up they fund about 80% of our revenue. So it's ultimately important that our taxes are solid and they are collected. All right, so everybody had a chance to ask questions about departments. I'm going to move ahead to the next part of the program. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them about the department. All right, I'm moving along.
You gotta speak up on it.
All right, I'm going to do my best to speak up. All right, so the last time we did a financial trend monitoring presentation was December of 2022, and it wasn't me up here speaking about it, so that's another difference about this process this year. I'm going to go through some financial trend monitoring system look-back data. What the financial trend monitoring system does is it's a look-back to try to identify troubling or risks to your financial condition based on historical data. Tonight, I'm going to focus more on the 5-year projections in the future. Typically, through the 10-year look back, there's about 14 indicators that we look at, different financial measures. I've produced 5 for tonight, and then we'll move along to the projections. So again, it's important to note where we were with these 2 programs back in 22. In December 22, that was following the FY23 tax rate being set. In financial circles, when the tax rate is set, that's basically looked at on a municipal basis as when your budget's final. So there can be changes up to that point if the legislative body town meeting here would choose to meet again. But once the tax rate's set, it's basically from a financial basis looked at as the budget is final. So in 2022, in December, the tax rate had been set, and then that was before the FY24 budget had begun. So currently now, on August 2024, it's obviously prior to the FY25 tax rate being set. It's prior to the books being closed for FY24. Although we're past June 30th, we're into the new year in FY25, but the books haven't been closed yet. And it's prior to the FY26 budget being considered. So again, I would recommend coming back later in the fall after our books are closed, looking at the look back data again, maybe just putting it on the webpage or something like that so we don't have to sit here for hours, or maybe just deal with that. But anyway, we'll have much more reliable data, and it'll be much more helpful to wait till the books are closed and then coming back later in the fall. So this is one of the first ones. We talked a lot about taxes, but this is one of the look back financial trend data measures. The top table up there is the net property tax revenues in nominal dollars. There's an asterisk in 2024 because it's the year isn't closed yet, but we're pretty sure that that's what our revenues are going to be. It says, if you can't read it, $57.96 million. And then the bottom table reflects the property tax revenues being adjusted for inflation using the CPI, going back to 2014, the first bar in the chart, dollars. So the warning trend here, or the trend here to look at is, are your taxes falling with respect to inflation? And that would be a warning sign that maybe your tax base is eroding or something to that effect. So under the ICMA guidance, and I should step back, the 10-year look back is derived from ICMA, International City Managers Association guidance. They don't tell you exactly how to do these measures, but we've been doing these measures in a similar way for multiple years, and this was prepared in the same manner. And again, the warning sign here is that's relatively level. It's grown in 2014 numbers. It's grown from $39 million up to $44 million. And again, those aren't actual today's dollars. This is inflation adjusted back to 2014 dollars to compare. And it's consistent. The tax revenue's grown. And I think a big reasoning behind that would be we rely on it more and more as state aid declines in the town budget. But anyway, we'll move on to the next one. This one also involves taxes. This is our uncollected property taxes at the end of the year. So basically, it's just 2 ways of looking at the same thing. They're just inverses of each other. One is uncollected taxes at the top. One is collected taxes. If you added both of these together, they would add up to 100%. So this bottom table reflects it from an optimist view. We collect 99%. Above makes it look extreme, like what happened in 2020. Well, that was the COVID year where there was tax relief pushed by the state. So we ended up collecting the taxes the year later. So it was a short-term effect. So it looked like we may have had a warning trend back in 2020 that people are having trouble paying their taxes, but it was simply because people were held harmless for interest and so forth during the COVID year. This is another one. We're going to talk about the long-term liabilities that the town has. The town's a part of the Worcester Regional Retirement System for its pension plan. The Worcester Regional Retirement System came out of county government, and really the only functioning part of it is the retirement system. We are one of about 100 other cities and towns that belong in housing authorities and other municipal entities that are in Worcester County and participate in the Worcester Regional Retirement System. It's governed by state law. They have to produce an assessment to us, and they have to get to a funding level. They have to be fully funded in the pension plan by 2040 by law. Their plan is to be fully funded by 2036, and we're rated actuarially within their system, so we know that our unfunded liability is approximately $32 million. So to meet that 2036 deadline, we know that they're going to be increasing our assessment that's part of our general fund budget every year by about 10%. So that's modeled in our projections to the future. So the other long-term liability we have recorded in our financial statements is OPEB. That means other post-employment benefits other than the pension. So a lot of cities and towns, if we had our own pension system, we might look at these in tandem with each other. They're both long-term liabilities that are very large once you recognize them. We started funding the OPEB Trust Fund. It looks like it's a very low 13.84%, but we've only been at it since 2015, and we took 2 years off during the pandemic. So what's important here is that we're saving money, putting it aside in this trust fund, and it's a positive trend because we've gone from 0% funded when we first had to recognize this in FY 2009. And when I say we first had to recognize it, this is due to government accounting standards boards requiring us to report this in our financial statements. So we are required to do our financial reporting for GASB statements, and the GASB statement went back to 2009. We had to hire an actuary to perform this valuation. We still have to do updates to it every year for our financial statements, and we have to employ an actuary to do that. So again, we're going to talk about, we've modeled continuing the contributions to the trust fund in our projections going forward, so that was why it was important to include this. At the same time, this table here reflects there's $5.22 million at the end of FY23. We don't have our FY24 numbers yet, but at the end of FY24, we have $6.32 million in the fund now. So it grew over $1 million over the course of the year. Well, we put in $600,000, but it also grew from interest income. These funds are managed by the PRIM board, which is the state's money managers that manage the state's pension funds. And I believe they allow cities and towns to put their OPEB trust funds with the PRIT fund for lower amounts, but we had to put up a sizable amount at the beginning, and the contributions we've made have been not insignificant. The towns, of the $6.32 million, $2.42 million is investment income, and $3.9 million is the town contributions. And so the 6.32, I should mention as well, does not reflect $600,000 that we just transferred from the FY25 budget that was approved at town meeting this year. And the last trend monitoring look back slide is this pavement condition index. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but this is part of our financing plan for the capital improvement plan. There's money in the DPW budget funding these improvements in Chapter 90. So in order to maintain our pavement condition index, which we hire an engineering firm to go out and rate the town's roadways, and basically our spending through DPW in the capital plan from Chapter 90. Chapter 90 is the state program for highways. We get approximately $500,000 a year. So within the capital improvement plan and the DPW's operating budget, the gap to the 1.1 million is made up there with about $600,000. All right, so since there's been so much time that's gone by since the last trend monitoring meeting and set of financial projections that have been presented, I'm just going to go through briefly what the assumptions were that we made back in December of '22. We were, and again, this is going back to the FY24 budget development. So again, taxes increased through what's allowable by Proposition 2.5. The new growth we were projecting was $40 million in value. So that equates to $592,000 in new revenue for FY24. And then the outer years we predicted $30 million of value. And then the unused levy capacity that the town has under Proposition 2.5 was modeled for being available to use. This model used state aid increasing 1% annually. Motor vehicle, other local receipts were projected to increase 2.5% per year from 24 to 28. And then there's some other comments here. We're going to continue investing in the capital improvement plan. So further, on the expense side, and for the FY24 budget, the projections were that OPEB was going to be continued to be funded. We had some debt service for major capital projects included in this budget presentation. We were using $25 million borrowed for 20 years. For the fire station, that has since been revised upwards. Proctor Roof for $1.7 million. As you may know, that was funded from ARPA funds, so we do not need to include that in the capital plan or borrow for that. There's a fire engine for $900,000, a DPW tight tank that I think the price increased to $475,000. Those are baked into our debt numbers now because those were approved as debt authorizations. The Algonquin Regional High School complex was included here. That's since been approved, and that's included in our projections going forward. And then the PZ feasibility was factored into this, and as you know, it was approved at this past year's town meeting for $900,000 with an anticipated MSBA component of 50% is what we've modeled in our models. The key budgets, the Northborough K-8 schools, the Algonquin assessments, and general government were projected to go up 3.5% annually in this model. And let me just skip ahead to my notes. Yeah, so at this time, these are projections. They're broad numbers. We're putting them together to look at a model to see what our resources are and how we would meet these budgets. At the time, I remember there was a lot of discussion over the school committee had voted a budget that was already higher than this. There was a coming together with these rates. What the town's, the K-8's budget was actually 5% this year. The town's was 4%, and Algonquin's was 4.6%. So these are just numbers. We're putting them together to see what they are. They may come out to be more. There's policy decisions to be made throughout the budget process. So I added this note here. Further items in the CIP were not considered beyond these items here. And as anybody that's been involved, I've been to many meetings of the Financial Planning Committee where they've heard our 6-year capital plan. And the capital plan has become more robust. And one instance of that is the facilities. We knew when we hired a facilities director that the position was going to help all of the departments that are not building experts. But the other side of that was we knew that a lot of pent-up need and unmet maintenance costs were going to be unearthed, and then those have since been entered into the capital plan this year. So I just put that there highlighted because there's going to be a consideration for the capital plan being considerably higher in the future and in the projections that I'm going to be showing in a second. Okay, so again, this is basically the budget model. Education is inflated to 3.5% here. The town government budget's inflated by 3.5%. The debt we know about, and then debt was modeled for the fire station starting in 2025. That's since, as we know, that's been delayed because we haven't voted on that yet, that project yet. So again, and how do we meet that? We had unused levy capacity, and that's being drawn down through this process through FY28. And again, it's a balanced budget that's presented here. This was the tax increase projections at the time. So this is entirely from the presentation from 2022. There was a prediction that tax bills were going to increase $582 a year on average from 2024 to 2028. So that was highlighted at that meeting, and that was using the 3.5% projections for the town, school, and Algonquin budgets. Okay, so what assumptions are we using now? We're still continuing to increase taxes by the Proposition 2.5 increases. We're now budgeting new growth at $30 million in value from 25 to 2030, not too different from what we had done before. The existing unused levy capacity is available for use. And then this is one thing I want to call attention to, is that if there's not enough money to meet the needs of the budget, we've modeled an override or some kind of debt exclusion, some kind of relief from Proposition 2.5 in order to model what we would need to balance the budget. State aid increases 1% annually. That's consistent with how we've done it in the past. Motor vehicle other local receipts were projected to increase approximately 2% per year from 26 to 2030. This model here assumes that we will have free cash of at least $2.875 million available for the capital improvement plan and the operating budget. And we've adhered to the financial policies by maintaining our financial reserves, and we're continuing to invest in the capital improvement plan. So again, the estimation of using $2.875 million, is that a good estimate? Is it not? This is the line where $2.875 million is on our historic look back to way back to 1990 for our certified free cash. So not every year do we have $2.875 million. So it's an assumption. We've put these numbers together with the assumption that we're going to get 2.875 million. We haven't closed the books yet. The way free cash works is that after July 1st, we don't have any free cash anymore. We need to apply to the state to get it recertified. I need to close the books and do that paperwork. We know, based on the votes that were taken at town meeting last year, we had 3.5 million certified. Then what was left of that was 770. So we're starting with 770, and then we're going to add the returns from this year, unspent appropriations from the budget, and revenue that comes in above budget. And again, the books aren't closed yet. We don't have a final number on that, but most likely it will be positive, and most likely we'll be approaching the 2.875 we need. And again, $30 million of an estimate for new growth. There's been some years in the past where we've had a ton of new growth, well beyond $30 million, going back to this look back. How likely is it that we'll get $30 million? Well, I think it's pretty likely that we will for 2025, depending on decisions and plans that are made for development in town. It could go down in the future. So we'd have to adjust the model accordingly as we go forward. So continuing on these budget assumptions, we're going to continue funding OPEB at $600,000 in this model. The debt service for major projects is included. We've updated the fire station construction project debt. We've extended it to 30 years to just model what that looks like to provide a lower amount for tax impact. Peasley School feasibility is modeled in the debt numbers. The Algonquin complex is included now. Nothing's included for the construction debt because that's assumed to be, for Peasley School's construction project, that's assumed to be approved in 2030, and it's outside of the years looked forward in this model. Same thing for the town hall project debt. There was a town hall project in the capital plan. It was really just an estimate pulled out of the air for what it would cost. It sounds like as we've gone through the process of the feasibility study with town hall, it's going to be much more than what we had in the capital plan. And it's also likely that this isn't going to be tackled until after the Peasley construction. So the key budgets in this model, we've modeled them going up 3% annually. It's just a number. Nobody told us that that was enough. I mean, from the presentations you've heard tonight, there's a lot of pent-up need and people coming forward with requests that may make that 3% amount difficult. We haven't heard from the schools what they've projected they've needed for the next year or going forward. What this model does do, though, is it picks out some of the town's fixed costs that we know will be increasing more than 3%. For example, health insurance is likely to increase more than 3%. The Worcester Regional Retirement System assessment, the amount of that the town's general fund's exposed to is $3.1 million, so it's not insignificant. So we've modeled that with a 10% increase as well. You've heard from the fire chief. A case was made that 8 firefighters are needed per the statistics that he presented. We've applied for the SAFER grant. I forget what that stands for. I'm just going to keep calling it the SAFER grant and pretend I know. It's awarded in the stabilization. During the budget hearings, the concept of a special purpose stabilization fund to begin saving for it was brought up. So we've modeled that in this system to try to show what it would take to start saving for this to lessen the hit in 2028 when we would have to fully fund the firefighters, assuming we're keeping them. And then the attempt is maintain level services and affordability. Affordability is in quotes. And again, I'm not sure I love the order I put these in, but again, I'm talking about the capital plan being increased. We've modeled $2 million of free cash being used toward the capital plan every year. That's typically one of the funding sources for pay-as-you-go capital is free cash. Over the past number of years, going back 10 years or so, it's averaged about $1.5 million has been used toward the capital plan. Since we've just modeled $2 million being used toward it. So again, these are the numbers from the 6 years total that the Financial Planning Committee evaluated during their budget hearings this year leading up to town meeting. I'm trying to get the... So DPW facilities, as you can see, $2.6 million is in the capital plan related to recommendations that have come through the facilities department. And then this is the general government request, $95 million that's over 6 years, that's not 1 year. So this includes everything, including the enterprise funds, requests for the pay-as-you-go capital that's been introduced by the Regional School Committee and Regional School Department this year. Those are all included in this capital plan, and the bottom line of the 6 years was $134 million that are funded across enterprise funds, the general government, and the schools. So what I've done here is I've highlighted an amount here that's the funding gap that the general fund would face should we fund all of these capital projects that were in the capital plan. So these adjustments here, 2025 is already built into the model. Enterprise funds aren't paid for from the general fund. The regional high school, projections for their capital, pay-as-you-go capital assessment is in the education projections. We've subtracted out one thing I'm not sure the chief mentioned or not when he was doing his presentation is we have an ALS life ALS quality ambulance service. And we have a revolving fund where the medical bills from the ambulance go into and fund activities from the fire department. The town's general fund is not exposed to the debt related to the ambulances. It's the ambulance revolving fund that's funding the debt for the ambulances. So that's subtracted. Then the town hall project number, again, number was pulled out of the air. We were expecting, we plugged in $20 million into the capital plan. That doesn't go anywhere. That's not approved. That was being in here for 2028. That's likely not to come till after Peasley School. There's an increase here for Peasley School as well. I think current estimates are around $90 million for that project. That would be considered in 2030. Here, this is the difference between the 28.7 that we had in the model before and $45 million for the capital plan, which reflects an estimated MSBA reimbursement of 50%. So before you get worried that we haven't funded this $49 million in the plan, the debt for that would obviously be considered as debt excluded debt, but that debt would not hit in this window of time. So affordability, again, just one quick mention to that. We've taken a look at where our tax bills fall relative to the state and relative to our other surrounding communities. And it's very hard to read, I understand that, but what this kind of shows is where Northborough's ranking falls for the prior years. This is 2024, going back in time. And it shows what our rank is relative to the rest of the state. And likewise, these are our neighbors, and that's where they've fallen relative to the rest of the state. So there's 351 cities and towns in the state, and Northborough's tax bill was in the 60s, which means it had the 60th highest tax bill in the state. Back here in 2020, it was in the 50s, which means higher relative to everybody else. And here shows a trend of decreasing relative to neighbors and the rest of the state. This was just updated today. For FY24, the town's tax bills dropped to 74th of the state. So does that mean that we're getting more efficient and just doing better with taxes, or does it mean there's pent-up needs that have built up? That's a policy decision to make as we go forward. But generally, if we compare ourselves to our neighbors, our tax bill is significantly less than Westboro and Southboro. It has been for the past 10 years. It likely will continue to be for some time. Some of our neighbors, it looks as though they may have some pent-up needs. This line at the bottom is Shrewsbury, who we're often compared to. Looks like their debt exclusions and projects that they've done are moving theirs upwards, closer to us and the rest of the state. The other measure for affordability we looked at was we can only get so much data from DOR and so forth, but we looked at the per capita income for Northborough residents and our neighbors' residents relative to the tax bill. And what's interesting, Southborough has one of the highest tax bills, but they also seem to have the lowest tax effort at 10%. And Westboro is the second highest from that list, and they have the highest amount of tax effort. So again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. This is a very just snapshot of a point in time looking at where our tax bills fall relative to the demographics in town in Northborough. All right, so let's get into the projections. Again, this is the education. All of the assumptions are rolled forward here. Town departments, as I mentioned, Algonquin introduced the concept of a pay-as-you-go capital. Everybody's acknowledging and recognizing their building and facility needs and putting them forward. So that's where is it? This capital number here. I think Greg had expressed that they're going to prepare a capital plan of at least $500,000 a year going forward, which we would split with Southborough. We, in the regional district, this number here is simply 61% of $500,000, which is our last assessment percentage, how much we share of the Algonquin's costs with Southborough. Algonquin renovation debt from the project from 2000 is in here. It's estimated. We get assessed debt. It's called overlapping debt. It's a technical term, but it means that it's a debt of the regional school districts that we're responsible for a share of. 2027 should be the last year of the debt, so that's why that trails off to zero here. Algonquin athletic complex debt. I believe they're going to be bonding this year, so there'll be a principal payment in 26. That's why that's increased from 187 to 478. So that's our proportionate share of an estimated debt table for the complex. Same thing with Assabet. They're much smaller, the vocational school. We have a locked-in debt table with them, so we know these numbers aren't going to change. They're going to decline over time through, I think it's 2037 for an ad rent project at the Assabet vocational school. So again, going through the town departments have been called out separately from these fixed costs, like our debt service, which we know. Health insurance is projected to go up 4%. The retirement assessment here is projected to go up 10% a year. The solid waste subsidy, I didn't list this in the bullet points, but the solid waste subsidy is expected to go up 4% a year based on our escalation in the contract that was signed with the new provider. And then we have some other fixed costs, and those are set to go up 4% as well. So within these numbers, the idea came up to start saving for these 8 firefighters that if we get the federal grant and hire the firefighters, then the federal grant will cover it for the first 3 years. We wanted to model the idea that it was responsible to start saving for this expense. So again, we just drop numbers in here as an example. This would be a policy decision whether we do this or not, whether we propose a stabilization fund, a special purpose stabilization fund to save from the tax levy for this. So basically what this shows is $700,000 being saved in over 2 years, then $500,000 being used to bring on a $500,000 or $573,000 expense in year 1, then trailing downward, using up the remainder of it over the next 2 years. And then this is highlighted here. This is our existing debt or projected debt for the fire station construction project and the existing debt for the land and design, Lincoln Street Schools project, which is already approved. That's fixed for time, and then other debt excluded debt. I didn't really save a lot of space here. That's just the library and senior center. We've got we did multiple projects in town some time ago, but the debt still continues through 2029. So some of the other expenses we have here are just other funds. These are funds that are voted to come into the general fund and just offset other departments, like, for example, the recreation fund. The plan to stop relying on the transfer for the department to be fully self-sufficient isn't built in here. So there's a lot of things that have been heard tonight that have not been factored into these models. And again, it's a broad set of models, and those are sets of policy decisions that will need to be made as we go through the budget. But again, all the other examples are laid out here. This is what we used from free cash toward the capital plan this year. And then we're just had modeled an estimate of $2 million a year tied to free cash. But that's the corresponding expense. So again, this is the revenue picture that meets and balances the budget. Again, we're starting from 2025, where we have unused levy capacity of $2.1 million. If these models play out, this capacity will be used up through FY27 using these numbers, and some kind of Proposition 2.5 relief or budget constraints or new revenues will have to be found to fund money to balance the budget in the future years. And so what does that look like? Obviously, Proposition 2.5 relief involves taxes being raised. This is the update of the projections, and I'll just call your attention here. I'm going to give away my secrets. This is how I, off the top of my head, if somebody asks me what the tax impact for something is, it's literally $45,000 in that range, somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000 amounts to 1 cent in the tax rate. If you have an average single-family home valued at $655,000, $691,000, that's what we're projecting it to be in 2025. That's 1 cent in the tax rate, $6.56. So every time the town spends or finds if the town spends $45,000, that the impact would be $7. So if we find $45,000 of additional revenue, then we can relieve taxpayers of $7. And then the other quick thing to think about or consider is values per cent. If we court a business to come to town that has value, and sets up shop on an undeveloped parcel, they increase the value $30 million, that would amount to 10 cents in the tax rate. They would shift the burden across a greater pool of tax base, and the taxes would go down. The tax rate would go down as a result. So the impact to the individual taxpayer would be, if there was a $30 million project that came to town, that would amount to 10 cents, and so that would be about $70 of tax impact. All right, so again, among the presentation that shows that the average tax bill is probably going to be $9,531 in 2025, you can really break that down by all of the elements of the budget and see what each individual tax bill is paying for. For example, of the $9,531, $6,735 is related to the school budget. $4,000 is related to the town's general government budgets, including all the fixed costs that are generally within the town budget. And everything else in this model. The OPEB trust is $88. And then at the same time, you have to model the offsets for the other revenue that the town receives that's not from taxpayers. So that's the magnitude for each taxpayer of our state aid, $886. Local receipts, they offset the tax rate by $648 to each taxpayer. So as you go along, you can kind of see the impact. And I prepared it this way because there was a lot of discussion during the budget hearings that people wanted to hear what the taxpayer impact was to individual taxpayers. So again, these are projections, but these numbers are out here so people can kind of see an order of magnitude. And again, so what does that model look like? It looks like with that fire station project and so forth, again, it's modeled to go up more than the average of the prior 10 years, $526. So you might ask yourself, oh, thanks. I'm making good time. We're going to get through this. All right. So what does that look like compared to the projection that was done 2 years ago? That's basically, kind of on target. This green line here was the numbers from 2022. So again, projections show that the Prop 2.5 overrides would be needed of 3.2 million. Then if you add the three numbers across to balance the budget, other options. So if you look at it on a longitudinal basis, the town's going to need $457 million across 5 years. So $3.2 million compared to $457 million is less than 1% in magnitude. So could budgets be constrained less than 3%? Maybe. But for order of magnitude for the 5 years, the town departments total $83.2 million across 5 years if you estimate 3% increases. The school department's budget is $160 million at 3% increases, and then the Algonquin operating assessment. Not any one of these could probably withstand a $3.2 million cut across 5 years, but maybe together, I don't know. But the constraints being placed in budgets, it would be a policy decision to be made during the budget process. So are there any other options? This is something that hasn't been considered here before. Through the capital plan, we have the option of anything that is in addition to what we don't have resources for currently, rather than borrowing. We could seek a capital expenditure exclusion. We're all familiar with Proposition 2.5 operating overrides. That provides relief from Proposition 2.5 by raising the levy limit that the town can levy. There's also debt exclusions, which our major projects generally are floated as. Like, for example, the election and the town meeting article for the fire station is going to be proposed as a debt exclusion. But you can raise money, you can raise one-time money for capital needs under a capital expenditure exclusion. I did a quick model to show what that looks like. It doesn't solve completely for everything. But again, the original model assumed we would be borrowing for the balance of capital projects over a period of time for the continuing years outside of the years that they're proposed. And during the 4 years here, it would be $1.5 million of interest cost savings. So that wouldn't get $3.2 million, but this would basically be raising money up front to pay for projects that we may have borrowed for otherwise. So obviously, it changes the model a little bit. Doesn't get us all the way out of the woods with the way these projections have worked, but it would probably wouldn't seek an override for $40,000. That's a function of rounding, or $35,000 could be found easily with this. In comparison to that, that's $35,000 or so. That could be found as savings, I'm sure. But the way that would work is it would be our funding gap for the CIP for 26 is $3.8 million. It'll come in as a capital exclusion, raise the levy allowed to be levied on taxpayers. So it would be raised in taxes that year rather than being spread out as debt later in the model.
Can I ask a quick question while
Sure.
we're on this topic? So, because there was a slide earlier, it wasn't up long and it's not in the packet, but I believe it was showing kind of the source tax revenues from industrial, commercial, residential, and personal property, and it looked to me like the share coming from commercial industrial is shrinking compared with.
If you're talking about this is simply new growth.
Okay.
This is where the amount that we're allowed to raise in additional taxes above Proposition 2.5 as a result of new properties or new development in town. It's not meant to confuse that topic. Right now, we have a mix of 73% residential, 27% commercial, industrial, personal property. Yeah, it's actually with these developments here, that mix has actually increased, and unless there's large residential development, which is not likely given the amount of land that's available in town, that mix is probably going to stay relatively level unless something happens that creates valuations of commercial, industrial, personal property values to fall, like if businesses leave town or go out of business or otherwise don't develop here.
Thank you.
So this is what changes here. Now we're showing that we're going to spend the $5.8 million in the plan. I just highlighted these in blue because these are the facets that changed through this alternate model. And again, that obviously increases the impact of taxes in that year. So that's what I projected under the original model. This is what it looks like under that revised model. So basically, over these years, we're saving $1.5 million by raising more money for these capital projects in the future. So that's basically what it looks like when you compare both of those models with each other. So we've talked a lot about debt for things, and there's a question about how much the debt's going to be for the fire station project. Should that be approved? We have a statutory debt limit. So the way that the statutory debt limit works is 5% by state law of the town's EQV. That's basically the town's overall real estate value, property value. Our 2024 EQV is $4.5 billion. So 5% of that is $227 million. So suffice it to say, we don't have any real, our outstanding debt at the end of FY24 is $18 million for all our debt. So we're not at risk of reaching our statutory debt limit. But the town does have a local debt policy, which is advisory, but was adopted in September of 2000. And that debt policy, which is part of our financial policies, is gross general fund debt limit is not going to exceed 15% of the operating budget. And then we have a measure for a net general fund debt limit not to exceed 8 to 10%. Well, the difference between gross and net was MSBA installments, basically, and we don't receive money from MSBA in that manner anymore, so there's effectively no difference between the gross and net debt. So what does that look like for our models related to the debt policy and looking at it? So we take the debt that we know about, the town's debt, and then add in what's called overlapping debt, Algonquin regional debt and the Assabet debt. Add all of those together. That's our general fund's exposure to debt. That's 3.8% of the operating budget. So we're well within our local debt limits, and what it kind of indicates is it's time to embark on a new project. Same thing with adding in the fire station construction debt. That brings it up to 7.9%. Going forward, that amount over 30 years is going to stay in this measure. So we're still within the debt limits of the local policy. So the next question, again, like I said, I like to put a lot of numbers on the screen. So, but what does that look like for the fire station project over 30 years for taxpayer impact? Again, we talked about this with the select board. The impact is projected here. If we borrow the money in FY25, which is likely we would have to if we borrowed $42 million at 4.25% for 30 years. The first year would be $472. That would be the impact on the average single-family taxpayer. If we did it over 20 years, I mean, again, that's a policy decision to be made. But whether we, the difference I want to call out here is the interest for 30 years, $28 million. The interest over 20 years is $19 million. So it's a policy decision whether we would raise another $102 on everybody a year in order to save $9 million over 30 years. And again, the individual impact is here, but that's over the life of the debt.
And those impacts are factored into the projected increases that you showed previously?
Yeah, at 30 years. This table here is factored into the projections.
So you have to change the policy in order to go from the 30 to the 20? Or is there's no policy to determine if we go for the 30 or the 20?
Well, I haven't run the numbers to see the debt policy. The debt policy is advisory. Again, like I said, there's no difference between whether we would be using the net debt or the gross debt measure because there's no MSBA installments, so it's kind of a meaningless distinction between the two. So it's advisory. That was adopted in 2000. Would we have to change it? Probably. I would recommend changing it if we're contemplating going beyond the debt policy. I mean, I think.
But Kelly, to your question, whether it's a change in policy to choose 20 years or 30 years of financing is a decision to make, not a change in policy. It's just one.
Right, but if that decision would amount to debt in the future being more than 10% per the policy, that would
Need to give us some
potentially
headroom in the out years.
preface a change in policy. But it's a policy decision, it's a local policy decision to make whether we borrow for 30 or 20 years for the debt. And let's see. Okay, so the next question would be, what if we did the fire station and Peasley School, two significant projects? So again, the intent of this table here is to show that we basically, within that debt policy, would be mostly within that debt policy for the period of time if we did both.
Based on both being 30 years.
On 30 years, 4.25% as the interest rate. And again, one note about this debt, that's the best estimate we have right now. If it's approved and we go forward and it gets, we need to borrow for this, we'll be seeking advice from our financial advisor who takes this to the bond market, and they'll tell us when the best time is to market our bonds. And chances are they gave us a conservatively high number when they told us 4.25 was the best number to use. So hopefully, we can cross our fingers and hope we get a lower interest rate when it comes time to borrow for the money.
And does it affect the interest rate percentage, the number of capital projects that are coming forward? So say there were 3. Does that affect the percentage that we would be given? Would it be higher because we'd be more of a risk, or would it be lower because we were giving them more money?
Well, if we didn't borrow enough, that would be more of a risk because we're not entering the market frequently. So we'll have to be rated by a credit rating agency. That's another reason why I didn't say it. I wish I did. But it's important for us to maintain our level of reserves so that we can achieve a good credit rating. We basically have a AA1 rating from Moody's. Likely that will be upheld based on our demographics and everything. But it was an upgrade in 2016, and that is important.
But does it affect that by adding the number of new projects within a 5-year span? Or
No, they're happy to lend money to stable Massachusetts communities. I mean, that's why we're able to take advantage of lower interest rates than basically mortgage rates and things like that, because we're legally required to pay our debt once we've approved it. So institutional investors look at it as a very safe investment, and that's why when they're competitively bid by the financial advisors, when they put it into an auction system, and they're bid on, they're bidding down low rates for us.
And is it smarter to then go to the 20 years so we're spending less money in interest? Because after a while, you're spending so much money in interest to put it out.
Right, and
That in itself could be a saving.
So again, it's a policy decision whether it's worth raising another $102 a year on the taxpayer in order to save the interest costs over a longer period of time.
I think we would acknowledge these are pretty significant increases each year in the tax rate, so I think that could be felt by a lot of people, that $102 could really make a difference.
But it's only one piece, and those numbers don't include what's really coming forward and being asked for this next season.
No.
It's about half, right? The firehouse project is about half of the increase, right?
Okay, so all of the projections we've made, we've included this debt being included in the projections. that answers the question.
I remember, related to the debt question in 20 versus 30 years, I remember, and I don't remember what you said for the number, if we got a better rate than the 4.25 they're projecting, I think you had said something about a certain percentage drop, or a certain rate drop would result in a savings of X. Do you remember what that
Well, it would be a year over year and then a lifetime of the term, but
Yeah, I mean, you
the
can
difference
see that
between
from,
4.25 and 3.75 is.
I mean, the taxpayer would save over 30 years about $1,000, you know, if it were 20 years rather than.
This is being
percentage
projected
rate.
at 4.25. Let's say by the time we actually issue the bonds, we're able to get 3.25. About how, do you know about how much that would save?
Oh, you're stumping me, Mitch.
Yeah, okay.
I put that in
No,
my memo to the board.
What I'm trying to get to
I
is.
don't remember what that is.
Yeah, you said it, and I've forgotten too. What I remember, my thinking is that once we get to the point of being ready to issue the debt, we're going to go to town meeting and we're going to say, we're projecting this to cost about X per year for average single-family home residents. If the rate has dropped, conceivably,
The impact will definitely be less, yes.
Yeah. Conceivably, we might then be able to make a decision of, hey, we committed to, an average of $350 per year over the term of the bond. If we can get that over a 20-year bond because of a lower rate, maybe then we make a decision, you know what? Instead of saving a little bit of money, let's commit to the same so we're not paying the interest. And then the people in 10 or 15 years, in 20 years certainly, will be very appreciative of that if we can do it. So it's just, and the financial advisors will give us some guidance as to what the rates look like when we're ready to issue this debt in a year or two.
That's the point I was just trying to make, was that they'll likely change. It's just a projection, and we just use the best numbers that we had in front of us at the time. This is what our financial advisors are seeing in the market now. If they go down later, if they say it's better to wait till February for some reason, we'll probably see if we can flow the cash flow locally until then. So the issue with the fire station and borrowing for it, and that's why we have some discretion over the course of the year. We typically borrow in June whenever we reissue debt, is that we can advance money to ourselves. We have the ability to do that, but at this threshold of $45 million, we can't advance ourselves $45 million. Our limit is what we have in stabilization, which is $6 million. So we could advance ourselves. Could we get ourselves through to when they tell us a good time to borrow would be? Probably in the spring, but it may not be June. We may need the money before then. Because the cash flow analysis is that we're going to need this money quickly once the project's approved. But to your point, if anybody wants to look up the select board packet from July 15th, I know I put the number in there for what the difference would be for saving 1%. I'm sorry, I didn't bring that number with me.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting at, is maybe we could end up doing the 20 at the number that we're committing for a town meeting, maybe.
And, let's see.
So you've talked about the fire station and Peasley, but in the projections, we haven't mentioned town hall. So how many years out do you think that will be?
I don't know.
After Melican.
I said after Melican.
After Peasley.
After Peasley, after Melican, then I don't think so.
Fiscal 2029 for feasibility.
It has to have a discussion for the board for what its next use is, where we go, and how we get there. But it's probably after that because of the tax impact. But we would have to mothball, if we were going to go to White Cliffs, we'd have to mothball it the way we want it to be maintained, to reuse it in 15 or 17 years. It's unfortunate, or we reuse it for something else. I'm not saying we should do one thing or the other. All I'm saying is that we want to preserve it, if we want to use it for this, or we want to have a discussion about reusing it and selling it and getting it attached.
No, I agree with that, but in the meantime, we maybe should be doing something with the current town hall. We're talking about carpets at senior center and here and.
Well, in 2012, you consolidated a lot of borrowing authorizations from other debt-related projects to about $812,000 that's been sitting there since 2012. So we are trying to come up with a plan for the HVAC system and some of the conditions that people work in now using that 812.
Yes, plus there's about $1.1 million between there's a CPA article that was designed to cover the HVAC system at the town hall, and then there's about $800,000 left in a capital article from 2012.
So we can approve the current conditions, and staff will, they've been there this long, they will continue to be happy for the next generation that goes into it.
Thank you.
All right, so I was just going to conclude. Again, we need to think about and prepare for the Proposition 2.5 levy capacity being reduced in the future budgets. Again, this model here shows it in FY28. So we also need to continue to invest in the CIP and other OPEB and pension, and evaluate the options for funding these things with Proposition 2.5 exclusions. Prepare for the requirements of operating budgets. We've heard a lot of new requests coming up tonight, but we did model in this special purpose. An example of preparing would be the special purpose stabilization for the SAFER grant to provide for the 8 firefighters that would be the town's responsibility in 2028. We need to maintain compliance with our financial policies, and then again, the only point I want to make is that there's a lot of policy decisions that will need to be made for these numbers to become final in the end, and that concludes what I have for our presentation.
Thank you, Jason.
So Jason, just a big ticket question then, just to close out. We spent the first half of the meeting where departments told us how they needed more than the 3% operational budget and more capital that's currently in the capital plan. So what's our next step in reconciling your projections that don't include those increases?
Well, I think it is to have a policy decision of asking for conditional amounts. Like, say, if you're constrained to this amount, I mean, and again, this is my suggestion, is that we would put out guidance that said, please prepare a budget that fits within 3% and what that looks like, whether that involves a cut to services or if that's level services. Then tell us what you would need to have level services, and then what your enhancement would be. So it would be a nuanced process of weighing all of these additional requests. So this model here shows all the town departments being 3%. It doesn't mean one can't be 5 and one can't be 1, so to speak.
I had another question that went out my head. I'll come back to it.
This is probably, I think you could probably help me out with this one. So Michael's saying, what about the MBTA communities? If that went in, if an MBTA apartment situation went in, how much would that actually bring in for revenue for tax?
Well, they would be part of the tax base if there was a development that resulted from that zoning regulation, that zoning law.
But, you know,
If
what
there's a development.
would we actually gain from that? Like you said, with the other one, with you're getting 10%, 10 cents on the $300,000?
$30 million. Well, it would be the same thing. If there was a $30 million
Increase in value.
residential value, it would be the same effect. But typically, the reason people court businesses is because they have less demands on the town services that residents do. So it'd be the same effect. It's just value that's part of the tax base.
Yeah, well, then that's the point of it, is, you know, you have to look at what you're developing and how much it's costing us and how much we're getting back. So how much are you gaining or losing?
Well,
clearly, if you did an analysis of the tax split between center and third for commercial, if you had to bear that all, so average small communities have 10 or 11% commercial industrial. If you had to do that analysis, your tax bills would be, in providing the same level of service at $60 million, would be probably 0.75% of what they are now. They'd be, you know, twice as high, maybe a little less than twice as high. So it would be more. So that's part of this discussion, right? You can talk about constraining budgets or growing the economy in a commercial, industrial capacity, or even personal property growth. If those things grow, you lessen the impact. And you have that on the slides where you look at our affordability compared to other communities. Because we have so much commercial, we have less, I don't know, a lower tax bill for the single-family tax bill relative, because you have that commercial base. So we need a strategy around continuing to maintain it or grow it, because if you lost $30 million worth of value of commercial, you still get to collect that tax, you're just gonna collect it from a single-family household.
Right.
So that's a huge impact, so we wanna maintain that and grow it as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah, I guess it's just interesting to see that in the conclusion or the closing comments, you know, that there isn't also a marker for new or additional revenue streams. That, you know, whether it's increasing the tax base by development of industrial or residential spaces, commercial or otherwise, increasing the local receipts by driving traffic to businesses that otherwise aren't getting it. You know, like I think in by department too, like I've heard good feedback, and there certainly our departments do, I think, a pretty good job of this, though I hear a level of tentativeness towards actualizing the prices to the expenses or broadening scope of services, or in some areas I could see a consolidation of services with a price increase. But new or growth in existing revenue streams. So I think that that's the part that I'd like us to be equally considering as we're also evaluating. You know, and this is for the school department too. You know, this is, I'm not saying we're exclusionary from that paradigm, but I don't hear that a lot tonight. And so I think that's something I'd like to be.
To answer that question, there's not a lot of opportunity to increase revenue streams.
I'm not saying there's a million opportunities out there.
But
I'm just saying what I haven't heard is much talk on it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I understand the constraints. I understand that the market is not what the private sector goes out and applies itself to. But it just hasn't been a point of focus tonight.
Right. So again, one thing I forgot to mention, which is a good point, is that back when there were some local options that were offered for additional revenue, being meals and rooms tax, that's part of our local receipts. But we passed those initiatives. We increased our our meals tax by 0.75%. So all of the surrounding towns have also adopted that feature as well. So we collect about $480,000 a year as a result of that, and that local option was passed with the understanding that it was going to be used to fund the OPEB contribution every year. So that new revenue was tied to an actual spending thing. So we do think about those things. The Municipal Empowerment Act, which is being considered, has more local options in it. Unfortunately, there are more things like local option taxes that are out there. That hasn't passed yet, but we would obviously evaluate them and look at them if there's legislative ability to raise more revenue.
There's policy influence there too. You know, as you made, there's a lot of policy decisions to be made. Some of those policy decisions will need to be considerate of revenue.
A piece of what Laurie Connors would have presented, and she will make her tape for this, for her goals, and I think it's some goals of other boards and committees relative to an economic development coordinator. I think that's a piece they'll draw, but before we do that, we need to have an agreed upon set of values for economic development, because there's consternation on traffic of warehouses, no warehouse. We need to coalesce around something first, and then, but I don't know that that's the final starting point, but I hear what you're saying. But it's one of the things that we constantly hear.
Weigh the two together. I'm gonna have an increase in expenses.
Yep.
I'd like that to not increase exponentially without some type of long-term offset. If I'm looking at what the baked-in expenses now with inflation have been over the last 2 years, really excited to see it come down. Those prices are baked in, those expenses aren't coming down. Somewhere there has to be a margin differential. That's all
I know, but it's about the community deciding what its strategy is for economic development.
yes, 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 but.
Well, we heard what town meeting thought about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we heard plenty about that.
They don't want it.
But the board needs to be
Well,
driving.
again, to have a discussion that's meaningful, to get to a point where we can all coalesce around it, is just like this, right? It's just, we need to make a decision about the direction, and then go in that
If we
direction.
go out to our constituents and say, good luck, it's all level services for the next 5 years.
It could be that, right? It could just be level services for 5 years.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually leads into a point that I wanted to make sure that I made. The department heads that presented tonight presented information that they've obviously been thinking about.
Super thoughtful.
And
Really thoughtful
and having
presentations by everybody.
discussions at a staff level. The select board, when we brought Tim on board, said we wanted to hear more about this ourselves, and the public should hear more about this. And this is the first time that many of these discussions have taken place, that the
Certainly in an open setting.
unmet needs within the town are now more public and are now ready to be discussed. And that makes all of our jobs as volunteers harder, but this is what we signed up to do. We've got to figure that out. And that's on the select board and the school committee and appropriations and financial planning to work together and figure this stuff out. So I want to thank the department heads for coming up, and I know it wasn't easy for some of you to be as open and honest with some of the things that hadn't been discussed openly previously, and I really appreciate it. I think it's super helpful to the town to know what the actual issues are so we can solve them publicly together. And I want to thank the volunteers that are here, that and the few people that aren't from some of the committees here, for being open to listen and start the process. And there are a lot of discussions that need to take place and a lot of difficult decisions that need to take place. I don't think anyone is thinking, oh, every single one of those suggestions that and requests the department heads are making, as valid as they are, we're going to do them as soon as we can. We've got to figure out how to prioritize all that stuff and figure out, are there additional revenues like increasing building permit fees? Are there opportunities for, improving, once the revenues come up in recreation, of having that self-funded again, and offsetting some of these issues? But we're not a revenue generating enterprise. But
You're not a profit generating.
we're not a profit generating enterprise. But this is a really, really good, and I particularly want to thank Tim for putting this together and having this new iteration of financial trend discussions start tonight. I mean, this is a really big deal.
From a business model standpoint, we gave you the list, the cheat sheet of the things we try to do. They're small in comparison to $80 million. But just know that the reason why you have a bond rating of AA1 is because Jason was here longer before me. And you had good financial policies, good practices, good reserves. So you're going to save money when you borrow money. You're going to pay less in interest because of all the things like this that you're doing, because you're paying attention to the public and to the dollar, to the tax dollar. So I don't have a crescendo here, but I'll take more questions. But we're still going to go through all the processes we go through, right? Last year we were abbreviated time period. We added a couple police officers. We created a new department. We did that all in a compressed time frame. We're not looking to do that again, but we want to go back to financial planning, back to appropriations earlier, set direction out to the staff on what we can do based on the guidance that you give us to say 2%, 5%, 6%, 7 here, 2 there, whatever it is, whatever the message is, I want to get it back and execute it. So that's kind of what I want us all in the room, so all know what we're doing and hearing it for the first time.
I'd like to understand the process better now. We're going to have a special town meeting. When would you need recommendations from financial planning and appropriations to meet the needs of the Board of
I expect the board to close the warrant on the 12th. They'll have a draft warrant article. I think there'll be 2 articles. Just so you know, that one of them is obviously the fire station. The other one, if the board agrees, will be to, when we settled the sewer thing with the city of Marlboro, we were going through that process. We weren't creating a budget as if we had to do settlement with them. True-up costs at the end of the year for our flows. So we created our budget as if we were still in litigation. We settled, and now we need to adjust that budget. So that's the second warrant article. I probably didn't do that in
So
justice.
the date that we need to meet and collaborate with.
Get a report.
Yes, to get a, yeah.
Yeah, the language, and I said this to John today, the language is prescriptive by state law and by the bond council for what the article is.
But
for
we're
town
gonna
meeting.
have to make a recommendation of where we think we're going and what we can handle. And then the Board of Selectmen will decide whether or not they agree with it or not, but we do need
Yeah,
to make
well,
a
I think
recommendation.
exactly what Jason presented to you tonight is exactly what you'll see at your meeting next week. And if you want more, we can get more too, but I think that's, it'll be condensed.
But we'll need a chance to talk.
Yeah, I'd love one.
I want to clap for Jason's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I also want to say,
Anything else you want to close with?
oh, yeah, I want to echo what Mitch said. This is the first time we've ever had everybody together. One of the things our board wanted to do, and we wanted to start to be inclusive, having everybody looking at a bigger picture and not just a small area. And I think that's the best way to handle it with all the new things that have come about, the new people that are here, the new board as it's changed, and helping to let the public get a better understanding themselves. Because they're the ones who ultimately make those decisions. And they don't usually have much information to make them with. So if we could do nothing else, the more we give them, to let them make a concerted effort to understand, is the best we can do. So, and I think you guys did a great job. Good job doing it.
Poor Angie. You have to buy her lunch for a week.
Can I make a motion to adjourn for financial planning?
Seconded.
We don't have to adjourn. Make a motion. I need one.
9:30, you guys are good.
Thank you.
Okay, who wants to make a motion on the select board to adjourn?
So moved.